Chapter 2143. The great hall exploded with a loud boom, turning into ruins. Morongyu stood in the middle of the ruins in a daze. He had yet to react to the situation with a look of shock on his face. Swoosh! Before Morongyu could react, the giant hand that had destroyed the great hall shattered the void and grabbed at him at lightning speed. At this moment, Morongyu finally reacted. He wanted to charge into Hichu Luoshu immediately. However, although his reaction was fast, the giant hand was even faster. Just as his body swayed, before he could move, he felt his body tighten. The giant hand had already grabbed him. At the same time, a terrifying force erupted from the giant hand and sealed his power in an instant. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that even Morongyu was stunned. It was also at this moment that he saw who the newcomer was. Lu Ning. This was Morongyu's first time seeing Lu Ning. However, he had seen Lu Ning's portrait before, so he was able to recognize Lu Ning right away. Morongyu's expression changed instantly. Didn't the 7 stars great elder go to deal with Lu Ning? Now, Lu Ning seemed to be unharmed. Moreover, this guy even took me down. What's going on? The situation quickly became clear. At the same time, several streaks of light flashed across the distant horizon and landed near Morongyu. They were the 7 stars great elder. However, the 7 stars great elders were not in a good state at the moment. It was not an exaggeration to say that they looked dismal. Their clothes were tattered, and their hair was disheveled. What was worse was that their auras were in a mess. All of them seemed to be injured. Even if the 7 of them worked together, they were still no match for Lu Ning. Morongyu cursed inwardly. Lu Ning was so powerful that he was beyond the 7 stars great elder's control. However, what did this have to do with him? Lu Ning, let go of Morongyu. There's no escape today. Great Elder Tian Shu looked at Lu Ning with murderous intent. Lu Ning laughed out loud. He looked at the 7 of them, as if he was looking at an idiot. Do the 7 of you take me for an idiot? I have the strength of a rank 9 selfless realm. What did you bunch of trash do to me? If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to kill you, you would have been dead by now. Get out of my sight. Level 9 of selfless realm. Morongyu rolled his eyes and felt a chill in his heart. The most powerful of the 7 stars great elder was only level 8 selfless realm. In the heavenly mystery palace, only the 2nd generation ancestor reached level 9 selfless realm. However, wasn't the 2nd generation ancestral master not in the heavenly mystery palace? With Lu Ning's current strength, he could definitely wipe out the current heavenly mystery palace. Even destroying the entire heavenly mystery palace would not be a difficult matter. However, why do you want to capture him? Morongyu could not figure it out. In fact, it wasn't just Morongyu who couldn't figure it out. The 7 stars great elder also couldn't figure it out. When they attacked Lu Ning seemed to have been prepared for it. He attacked before they could and sent them flying. Following that, Lu Ning left the mountain he was on. Then this happened. Kid, do you find it strange? Why would I look for you? Just as Morongyu was puzzled and was about to ask, Lu Ning asked first. It seemed like he was about to give the answer. Morongyu nodded repeatedly. It's very simple. If it wasn't for you, how would the 7 stars great elder and these idiots know about my plan? If it wasn't for you, why will my plan fail from the beginning? The 7 stars great elders' faces were ashen after being scolded for being trash and idiots. However, because Morongyu was in Lu Ning's hands, they did not dare to make a move. In fact, their strength was really inferior to Lu Ning's. Lu Ning's strength was much stronger than theirs. Once they made a move, they could die at any time. Morongyu was stunned by her words. So, you're saying that I'm the one who caused your plan to fail? If that's the case, then I'm really sorry. Actually, you don't know, but I have my own difficulties. How about you let me go first? How about I apologize to you again? Lu Ning was truly too powerful. At this moment, millions of escape methods flashed through Morongyu's mind. However, he rejected every single one of them in the end. It couldn't be helped. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks were just demons and monsters. Lu Ning snorted coldly. His terrifying killing intent almost froze Murong Yu's entire body and soul. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He knew that it was impossible for Lu Ning to let him go. In that case, he would hold him back for now and look for an opportunity to escape. However, he was only at the Heaven Realm. The chances of him escaping from Lu Ning, who was at level 9 Selfless Realm, were close to 0. Brat, you're just a clown. You're only at the Insight Realm. Even if it's because of you, I can kill you millions of times in one breath. Do you know why I captured you? Murong Yu rolled his eyes. A bad feeling immediately welled up in his heart. As expected, Lu Ning's next words chilled his heart. You can control souls, brat. You made the soul restriction I set up ineffective. There's only one possibility for you to do that. You're a soul cultivator, and your soul cultivation is even more powerful than mine. I'm done for. Murong Yu finally knew how Lu Ning knew about this beforehand. It turned out that it was because of the soul restriction. Murong Yu had been careless. Lu Ning could place a restriction on those people's souls. Perhaps he already knew when he imprisoned those people's souls. Originally, I wanted to overthrow the occult mystery palace and become its master. But your appearance made me change my mind. As long as I devour you, my soul will become even more powerful. When that time comes, even the founder of the occult mystery palace won't be my match. Ha ha ha. Speaking of which, Lu Ning could not help but burst into laughter. Looking at Lu Ning, who suddenly burst into laughter, Grand Elder Tian Shu and the others were puzzled. Lu Ning had spoken directly to Murong Yu through voice transmission. Therefore, they had no idea what was going on with this fellow. Looks like I can't escape this calamity. Do I have to abandon my physical body? Murong Yu's heart sank. His main soul was in Hichu Luo Shu, so he was not afraid of Lu Ning. However, he might have to abandon this physical body. Lu Ning, Master has treated you well. We've treated you well. The occult mystery palace has never mistreated you. Why do you want to overthrow the occult mystery palace? Grand Elder Tian Shu took a step forward and asked Lu Ning in a deep voice. Treated me well? Lu Ning sneered. His eyes flickered with terrifying killing intent. You only know that I'm an orphan, an itinerant cultivator with great talent and potential. Later, I was accepted as a disciple by Tian Shu. In the end, after countless years of cultivation, I successfully cultivated to level 9 of the Selfless Realm. However, do you know my background? Do you know why I'm an orphan? Towards the end, Lu Ning became agitated. Was there a hidden story? Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. Do you know why I'm an orphan? You'll have to ask your ancestor, the Palace Lord of the Occult Mystery Palace, your founder. If he killed my entire family back then, why would I be an orphan? Lu Ning continued speaking with murderous intent. Back then, the Palace Lord of the Occult Mystery Palace made me an orphan and killed my entire family. Today, I'm going to destroy the entire Occult Mystery Palace's headquarters and countless branches. I'm going to make the Palace Lord of the Occult Mystery Palace alone. I'm going to make him an orphan. This is the only reason I've schemed to become a disciple of the Occult Mystery Palace. Hearing that, everyone turned pale with fright. With Lu Ning's current strength, if he wanted to slaughter them, they would not be able to stop him. Lu Ning, our Grandmaster definitely wouldn't kill your entire family. Your entire family must have committed many evil deeds. That's why our Grandmaster took action. Therefore, you must be clear about this. Elder Alcade took a step forward and said in a deep voice, Bullsh *T. How did my family commit so many evil deeds? It wasn't your entire family who was killed, so of course you'd say that. I've been holding this hatred in my heart for countless years. I can finally take revenge today. Ha ha! As he spoke, the aura on Lu Ning's body began to soar rapidly. It seemed that he was going to slaughter the Occult Mystery Palace's headquarters. Activate the mountain guarding formation and kill this bastard. The 7 Stars Grand Elder looked at each other. Then, rumble, at this moment, a series of muffled noises came from all directions. The ground of the entire Occult Mystery Palace trembled violently, as if there was a huge earthquake. The occult formation. Lu Ning's expression changed slightly. The occult formation was the mountain guarding formation of the Occult Mystery Palace. It was set up by the founder of the occult mystery palace, and its power was extremely terrifying. While he was chatting with Lu Ning, the Seven Stars Great Elder had already silently activated the formation. They had no choice. Lu Ning was too powerful, so they could only borrow the power of the formation to kill him. Whoosh! Morong Yu felt his vision blur. Then he saw that Lu Ning had already charged toward the Seven Stars Grand Elder opposite him. He locked on a Grand Elder Tianxian and threw a punch. Grand Elder Tianxian was only at level 7 Selfless Realm. He definitely could not block Lu Ning's punch. However, Morong Yu clearly saw that Grand Elder Tianxian did not show any fear at all. On the contrary, a mocking expression appeared on her face. She waved her hand. An array of light appeared in front of her out of thin air. Then, it bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it charged toward Lu Ning. Lu Ning sneered and threw a punch. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the ray of light was shattered by Lu Ning's punch. However, Lu Ning was also sent flying. The power of the formation. No wonder Grand Elder Tianxian was not afraid. It turned out that he had used the formation. At the same time, Fekta, Alcade, and the others also made their move. All of them activated the power of the formation and attacked Lu Ning crazily. Looking at the power of the formation that came from all directions, Morong Yu's face instantly turned pale. Chapter 2144. You guys can fight, but you must pay attention to me. Don't kill me by accident. The pale-faced Morong Yu could not help but cry out. At the same time, he felt more and more displeased. He wanted to pursue greater power more and more. If he was too weak, he had no right to speak. In such a situation, his life was like a fish on a chopping board. He could only be at the mercy of others. If he was also at level 9 of the Selfless Realm, how would Lu Ning dare to attack him? He could kill him with a slap. Kid, don't worry. You're the hope of my soul cultivation. I won't let you die. Even if someone has to die, it'll be them. Lu Ning's voice rang in Morong Yu's ears. Morong Yu rolled his eyes. He did not believe Lu Ning's words. Perhaps Lu Ning would always protect him and not let him die. It was still possible for him to be severely injured. Moreover, this was under the premise that Lu Ning's life was not in danger. If his life was in danger, he would only protect himself. He would probably use Morong Yu as a shield. As for the Seven Stars Grand Elder and the others, there was a reason why they did not care about Morong Yu. The more they worried, the more arrogant Lu Ning became. In the end, he even used Morong Yu to threaten them. They attacked Morong Yu without hesitation because they did not want Lu Ning to know about Morong Yu's identity. Boom! 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 The power of the divine formation was quite terrifying. The power of the attacks was equivalent to the full force attack of a level 9 Selfless Realm powerhouse. Moreover, the formation had sealed off the surrounding void, limiting the battle to this area. This way, there would be no more innocent casualties. In the beginning, Lu Ning could handle it with ease. But it didn't take long for him to be overwhelmed. There was nothing he could do. The formation's power was becoming more and more terrifying. Attacks that seemed to cover the sky rained down. In every instant, Lu Ning had to endure hundreds of millions of attacks. This was equivalent to hundreds of millions of cultivators of the same realm attacking him. How could Lu Ning be a match for them? After a short while, Lu Ning's face turned pale. His entire body was injured in many places. At the same time, he was extremely shocked. He knew that the Heaven's Fate Great Formation was extremely terrifying, but he did not expect it to be this terrifying. This is a grand formation personally set up by the founder of the sect. It's more than enough to kill you. Lu Ning, just surrender. You have absolutely no chance of escaping today. The Mizar Grand Elder said in a deep voice after controlling a wave of energy to bombard Lu Ning. Lu Ning's expression was extremely gloomy. He knew how serious the situation was. If this continued, he would definitely be killed by the Heaven's Fate Great Array. But surrender? That was also impossible. Even if we can't destroy the mysterious Heavenly Palace after entering, we will still be able to do so. But one day, I will personally destroy the occult mystery palace. Lu Ning suddenly laughed aloud. Then he ripped open space with his bare hands and took a step forward. He charged into space and vanished without a trace. Did he escape? The seven-star Great Elders all stopped their attacks, their faces incomparably gloomy. After activating the Heaven's Secrets Great Array, the Heaven's Secrets Great Array would seal off the entire Heaven's Secrets Palace. At that time, no one would be able to enter or leave. Originally, the seven-star Great Elder also thought so. However, Lu Ning had escaped in front of them. What was going on? Lu Ning has been scheming. I'm afraid he's already considered this. He's already prepared a backup plan. Grand Elder Yu Hung said with a slight frown. Little junior brother has been captured. We have to save him. If anything happens to him, Master will definitely skin us alive, Elder Tian Shu said in a displeased tone. That's right. Until now, they still could not understand why Lu Ning wanted to capture Morongyu. Could it be that he already knew Morongyu's identity? We have to tell Master about this. Otherwise, let's not talk about how the seven-star Great Elder would rescue Morongyu. On the other side, Lu Ning brought Morongyu through the void. After leaving the occult mystery palace, they flew through the endless starry sky. After a long time, Morongyu finally could not help but ask, "Hey, where are you taking me?" "I'm taking you to a good place." Lu Ning smiled and slapped Morongyu's head. Morongyu felt his vision go black, and he fainted. Damn you. These were the only words that flashed in Morongyu's mind. After greeting Lu Ning, he did not know anything else. When he woke up again, he found that he had already appeared in a place where even birds did not poop. Here, soul power lingered. The density of soul power was even denser than heaven and earth essence chi. With a thought, the three soul balls in Morongyu's soul space began to spin rapidly. A look of joy immediately appeared on his face. The soul power absorbed here was 100 times more than in other places. At this speed, if he cultivated his soul here, the time needed to break through would be 100 times shorter. Originally, he would need hundreds of thousands or even millions of years to break through. Now, he only needed a few thousand or 10,000 years to break through. As long as I have 10,000 years, my soul will be able to break through to the 8th level of the Netherworld realm, or even higher. Morongyu was somewhat excited. However, he calmed down very quickly. This was because his strength and physical body were still sealed. He was still Lu Ning's prisoner. Lu Ning did not kidnap him here for him to cultivate. Instead, he wanted to devour his soul. Boy, I'm very curious. Why are there 3 soul balls in your soul space? Yours? You're only at level 7 insight. How can your soul's cultivation be so high? At this moment, Lu Ning's voice rang out in Morongyu's mind. Morongyu did not seem surprised at all. While he was unconscious, Lu Ning must have studied his soul thoroughly. However, it was fortunate that his main soul was in Hichu Luo Shu. Even if his soul was devoured while he was unconscious, Morongyu did not suffer any losses. This was because it was only a soul clone. As a powerhouse, why would you ask such a low-level question? Do you think I'll tell you? Moreover, didn't you read my memories? Morongyu sneered. Smack! As soon as Morongyu spoke, Lu Ning sent him flying with a punch. At the same time, he said coldly, Boy, don't think that you can bargain with me just because I can't read your memories. If I want you dead, you won't be able to live. I suggest that you cooperate with me obediently. Otherwise, I'll make your life a living hell. Morongyu merely sneered. If he were to reveal his secret, then he would really be close to death. However, he was secretly thankful that he had set up layers of restrictions on his soul. Unless his soul's cultivation was higher than his, Pang Ran would not be able to read his memories directly. If he read them by force, he would trigger those restrictions. Once the restrictions were triggered, they would automatically destroy Morongyu's memories. Otherwise, Morongyu would not have the chance to wake up at all. Looks like this guy really wants to know how I condensed 3 soul spheres. Before he succeeds, he probably won't kill me. I'll just stall for time. Maybe 7-star Master will come to save me. Moreover, this is a good place. It's the best place to cultivate my soul, Murong Yu thought to himself. He had already closed his eyes and started cultivating. Lu Ning was furious. He almost wanted to blow Murong Yu up with a punch. However, he did not blow him up in the end. Although he was a soul cultivator, his understanding of souls was too shallow. He wanted to obtain Murong Yu's cultivation method. "I'll make you beg me to tell you." Lu Ning sneered. He slapped Murong Yu's body. Instantly, waves of extremely powerful energy surged into Murong Yu's body. At this moment, Murong Yu's body felt like it was being bitten by 10,000 insects. It was extremely painful and itchy. However, this was nothing. When Murong Yu tempered his body in the past, his body would shatter and reassemble millions of times in an instant. The pain was even worse. Therefore, Lu Ning's method was useless against him. Although Murong Yu was in so much pain that his entire body was trembling, he did not open his eyes in the end. On the contrary, the intense pain strengthened his heart to cultivate. Cultivating under pain was more effective. It also tempered Murong Yu's heart and made it stronger. This method was ineffective, but Lu Ning's torture methods were endless. He used all sorts of methods on Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu did not give in. In the end, Lu Ning was at his wit's end. It could not be helped. Murong Yu did not fall for this trick at all. "Come on, let your torture be even more torrential. Your torture will only make me more determined and my heart stronger." Murong Yu laughed loudly, mocking Lu Ning to his heart's content. All he could do was curse at Lu Ning. Although Lu Ning's torture made him more determined, the pain was real. But the pain was real. It was real. It was real. He could only take the opportunity to vent. Otherwise, if he did not do anything, he would probably keep it bottled up in his heart. Lu Ning was helpless. Torturing Murong Yu was ineffective, and he could not read his memories. What else could he do? "Kid, you asked for this." Lu Ning's eyes suddenly shone with a ferocious light. He reached out his hand and grabbed Murong Yu's soul clone. "I don't believe that I can't read your memories. As long as I refine your soul, I'll see what else you can do." Lu Ning sneered. Then, he opened his mouth and swallowed Murong Yu's soul clone. "Even if I self-destruct my soul, I won't let you have your way." Murong Yu sneered. The aura of his soul clone began to rise wildly. Lu Ning was shocked. He circulated his soul power with all his might to suppress Murong Yu's soul clone. At the same time, he forcefully cut off the connection between Murong Yu's soul clone and the soul space. With that, he cut off the supply of Murong Yu's soul power. Chapter 2145. Without the support of soul energy, Lu Ning could easily suppress Murong Yu's soul. As expected, without the support of soul energy, Murong Yu's soul was quickly suppressed. After being suppressed, Murong Yu could no longer resist. He could only watch helplessly as Lu Ning began to refine his soul. However, Lu Ning, who was refining Murong Yu's soul, did not notice the strange smile that flashed across Murong Yu's face. Although his soul was suppressed, Murong Yu's soul still had many restrictions. Even if he were to forcefully refine it, these restrictions would have to be broken layer by layer. However, although Lu Ning's soul cultivation was much weaker than Murong Yu's, he was still stronger than Murong Yu. However, he was much stronger than Murong Yu. Therefore, it was only a matter of time before he broke these restrictions. Moreover, for powerhouses at their level, time was not a problem at all. Year after year passed. In the blink of an eye, over 10,000 years had passed. Haha, I've finally broken these damned restrictions. On this day, Lu Ning laughed loudly. The restrictions on Murong Yu's soul had been broken. As Lu Ning laughed loudly, waves of information surged from Murong Yu's soul like a flood. Lu Ning's expression sank. He immediately began to receive Murong Yu's memories. He received them all. This was because Lu Ning was worried that he would miss out on some important information. Fortunately, Murong Yu could no longer resist. His life's memories had been obtained by Lu Ning. Even some of the memories hidden in the depths of Murong Yu's memories were taken away by Lu Ning. Not only does this kid have terrifying talent and potential, but he also has many fortuitous encounters. How did he become a soul cultivator just like that? Lu Ning sighed internally as he looked at Murong Yu's memories. However, he was also shocked by Murong Yu's growth. Is this how 3 balls of souls are condensed? Lu Ning was overjoyed when he saw how Murong Yu had cultivated 3 souls. Apart from the method to cultivate 3 soul spheres, Lu Ning also obtained a lot of experience in cultivating the soul. After experimenting for a while, Lu Ning felt that many things that he did not understand in the past had suddenly become clear. What did this mean? Not only did it mean that Murong Yu's soul was stronger than his, but it was also accurate. This was exactly what Lu Ning needed. Therefore, Lu Ning began to cultivate the sphere of souls without any doubts. Time continued to pass. Year after year passed. However, Lu Ning's path of cultivation was extremely difficult. Even after 1,000 years had passed, he still hadn't managed to cultivate his soul sphere. However, Lu Ning was not impatient. He knew that this was normal. From Murong Yu's memories, he knew that Murong Yu had used 100,000 years to cultivate his first soul sphere. It had taken him an entire reincarnation cycle to cultivate 3 soul spheres. If I want to cultivate a soul sphere, I'll need to disperse all my soul power and reassemble it. I've already dispersed 50% of my soul, Lu Ning thought to himself as he continued to cultivate. Did cultivating a soul sphere require him to disperse his soul? 50%, 60%, 70%. Towards the end of his cultivation, Lu Ning gradually felt that something was amiss. The more his soul was dispersed, the less control he had over his soul. In the end, he could not even control the dispersed soul power at all. The soul power continued to run amok in his soul space. It was as if there was a force controlling it in the dark. The more his soul power was dispersed, the more chaotic his soul power became. 90% now. Once I disperse all the remaining souls, I'll be able to condense a soul sphere. Once the soul sphere is successfully condensed, his combat strength will skyrocket. Lu Ning laughed loudly as he continued to cultivate. Finally, after many more days had passed, Lu Ning's soul was completely dispersed. Rumble. Currently, in Lu Ning's soul space, billions of strands of soul power kept colliding with each other like a storm. It was extremely chaotic. Lu Ning's expression changed drastically because he realized that he could no longer control his soul. Currently, his soul power was in a state of chaos as it attacked wildly. T, what's going on? Why can't I condense a soul sphere? Didn't Murong Yu say that I can condense a soul sphere after dispersing my soul? Have I been fooled? However, Murong Yu's memory shouldn't be wrong. Lu Ning's first reaction was that he had been fooled by Murong Yu. However, what he had obtained was not what Murong Yu had said. Instead, he had obtained a direct memory reading. How could his memory be wrong? Even if memories could be forged, how could Murong Yu have the time to do so? Moreover, Murong Yu's previous experience was correct. He had verified it, since he had not been deceived. Did that mean he had made a mistake? Looking at the increasingly violent and chaotic soul power, Lu Ning began to ponder. Now, under the control of that unknown power, his soul power was becoming more and more violent. It was even showing signs of rushing out of his soul space. Once his soul power rushed out of his soul space, Lu Ning's soul would become weaker and weaker. In the end, his soul would die due to the exhaustion of his soul power. Once his soul died, Lu Ning would eventually perish even though he was extremely powerful. While Lu Ning was at a loss and trying to figure out a way to regain control of his soul power, Murong Yu, who had been beside him, suddenly opened his eyes. His soul had been refined. Was Murong Yu not dead? Had he been resurrected? Murong Yu was not dead at all, so there was no way he could be resurrected. Initially, the soul that had been refined was only his soul clone. It was not his main soul. No matter how many soul clones were refined, Murong Yu would not truly die as long as his main soul remained. Murong Yu's soul clone shared memories with his main soul. Therefore, the memories that Lu Ning read were Murong Yu's real memories. Of course, only a portion of them were real. Most of his life experiences were real. However, some of the more important ones were not. They were merely fabricated. For example, the method to cultivate the sphere of souls. How could he have a method? They were formed naturally when one soul realm reached a certain level. In truth, the so-called method to cultivate the sphere of souls in his memories was fake. He had only lured Lu Ning to scatter his soul. Moreover, Murong Yu's method had a side effect. Apart from that, the other experiences of cultivating the soul were real. It was because of this that Lu Ning had fallen for it so easily. In truth, Murong Yu had only taken advantage of Lu Ning's desperate need to cultivate his soul. Otherwise, if it had been someone else, his not-so-brilliant method would not have succeeded. Swoosh! After his main soul returned to his physical body, Murong Yu immediately stood up. At the same time, the three spheres of souls in his soul space revolved. An enormous amount of soul power immediately pierced into Lu Ning's soul space. At the same time, he had already summoned the Hichu Luo Shu and stored Lu Ning's physical body into the Hichu Luo Shu. At the same time, he kept blasting Lu Ning's body with powerful restrictions and formations. He wanted to seal and imprison Lu Ning's physical body. Now that Lu Ning's soul could not control his physical body, it was the best opportunity. Once Murong Yu wiped out Lu Ning's soul, Murong Yu would be able to turn the tables. When Murong Yu sealed his physical body, Lu Ning had already sensed it. However, his soul had already been scattered. He could not reassemble it and could not control his physical body at all. Therefore, he could only watch as Murong Yu sealed and imprisoned his physical body. At the same time, Murong Yu began to attack Lu Ning's soul. Rumble, with just a thought from Murong Yu, Lu Ning's soul, which was already in a mess, became even more violent. Moreover, Murong Yu's soul power began to seep into Lu Ning's soul and began to erase Lu Ning's memories. Murong Yu, you lied to me. Lu Ning roared in grief and indignation as if he had been greatly wronged. He finally realized that he had been tricked by Murong Yu. The result of being tricked might be losing his life. He was a terrifying existence at level 9 selfless realm. Yet he had failed miserably and been killed by Murong Yu, a mere level 7 insight realm cultivator. This was truly humiliating. Even if he died, he would not be able to die in peace. Murong Yu sneered. Lu Ning, the difference in our strength is too great. I should be the one to die, but you were too greedy and overconfident. Why? Why aren't you dead, yet when I've already refined your soul? Lu Ning roared furiously, unwilling to accept this. If he could not figure this out, he would not be able to die in peace even if he died. Soul clone. Don't you know about soul clones after reading my memories? Oh, right, there's no information about soul clones in my memories. I'm sorry, Murong Yu said with a smile. Lu Ning was so agitated that he almost vomited blood. That is, if he could vomit blood now. Soul clone. Lu Ning finally understood how he had fallen. This was Murong Yu's ultimate counterattack. How could this guy be so scheming? He must have planned all this when he was captured, right? Then he advanced step by step until he finally fell into his trap and turned the tables. Regret. Right now, Lu Ning could only feel regret. Fortunately, it's all thanks to your greed. Otherwise, I would be the one to die. You can rest in peace now. Murong Yu chuckled coldly. He began to increase his efforts to erase Lu Ning's consciousness. In truth, when Murong Yu's soul successfully entered Lu Ning's soul space, the huge difference between their souls had already doomed Lu Ning to a tragic end. After all, Lu Ning was only powerful because of his cultivation base. However, in a situation where he could not use his cultivation base, his soul was simply too weak. I can't accept this. Lu Ning roared furiously. In the end, his consciousness was completely erased by Murong Yu. Chapter 2146. He easily wiped out Lu Ning's consciousness. Lu Ning was a soul cultivator. Although his soul could not compare to Murong Yu's, it was still at a very shallow level. However, he was still a soul cultivator. If he devoured his soul, he could at least raise Murong Yu's soul by a minor realm, allowing him to reach level 8 of the Insight realm. Murong Yu was already prepared to raise his soul's realm. However, just as he was about to devour Lu Ning's soul, he suddenly stopped. Lu Ning is a terrifying existence at level 9 of the Selfless realm. Among the 100 million star zones in the Occult Mystery Palace, his strength is probably ranked in the top 10. If I refine his soul, wouldn't it be a little too wasteful? This thought suddenly appeared in Murong Yu's mind. Following that, another crazy idea rose in his mind. Take control of Lu Ning's soul and refine it for his own use, turning him into a puppet. Once this idea popped into his head, Murong Yu couldn't stop himself. In truth, it was better to take control of Lu Ning's soul and make him a slave than a puppet. After all, a slave would only be under Murong Yu's control. Nothing else would change. However, a puppet was different. It could not be the same as a normal person. In other words, if Lu Ning was refined into a puppet, he would only be able to maintain his current state. If that was the case, Lu Ning could only maintain his current cultivation level forever. He would not be able to increase his cultivation level any further. However, this realm was quite high. It was enough for Murong Yu. Therefore, Murong Yu began to refine Lu Ning. He sent Lu Ning's soul back into his soul space. Since he had lost his consciousness, even if his soul was restored, Lu Ning only stood where he was quietly. He did not move at all. This was because although his soul was still there, he had lost his consciousness. He could not control his thoughts, so he could not control his physical body, strength, and so on. Murong Yu began to refine him. In truth, he did not need to refine Lu Ning's physical body at all. He only needed to give the soul, which had lost its consciousness, a new consciousness. And this made it rather simple. A few days later, Murong Yu completed the refinement. Master, Lu Ning bowed respectfully to Murong Yu. Right now, Lu Ning looked exactly the same as a normal person. There was no difference at all. If they didn't directly check his soul, who would know that he was just a puppet? What a powerful puppet! As he looked at Lu Ning, Murong Yu gradually revealed a smile on his face. With his powerful puppet at the 9th level of the Selfless realm, within the boundaries of the Heavenly Mystery Palace, there was already no one who was his match. Unless 7 stars or the founder of the Tianji Palace made a move against him. But thinking about it, that shouldn't be possible. In other words, the current Murong Yu could already do whatever he wanted in the Heavenly Mystery Palace. In fact, the moment he became a 7-star disciple, he could do whatever he wanted. After all, with his status, who would dare to not give him face? With a wave of his hand, Murong Yu stored the terrifying puppet into the Hichu Luo Shu. Then, he looked at his surroundings and sent a message talisman to the 7-star Great Elders. After informing them that he was fine, he immediately sat down cross-legged. The soul power wreaked havoc here and was rather dense. It was definitely a good place to cultivate. Therefore, Murong Yu would definitely cultivate here for a period of time and break through at least a small realm. In fact, Lu Ning had captured Murong Yu here for thousands of years. During these thousands of years, Lu Ning cultivated his soul according to the wrong cultivation technique that Murong Yu gave him. Murong Yu did not idle around either. With extremely dense soul power and a long period of cultivation, Murong Yu's soul had already reached the peak of the 7th level of the Insight realm. Therefore, after cultivating for less than 100 years, his soul had a breakthrough. It rushed to the 8th level of the Insight realm in one go. After slightly stabilizing this realm, Murong Yu directly teleported back to the Rising Sun Dao Mansion. Then he used the treasures in the Rising Sun Dao Mansion to raise his cultivation and physical body to the 8th level of the Insight realm. At this moment, he already had the combat strength of a 2nd level of the Heaven realm. It was quite terrifying. However, facing the 7-star Great Elders and even Lu Ning's strength, Murong Yu was captured by Lu Ning. Especially after being captured by Lu Ning, Murong Yu realized just how small and weak he was. Therefore, he returned to the original place to continue improving his soul cultivation. Time was not known when one cultivated. When Murong broke through to the ninth level of the insight realm, 100,000 years had already passed. My soul, cultivation, and physical body have all reached the peak of the ninth level of the insight realm. I'm only one step away from the heaven realm. Murong was very satisfied. In just a few 100,000 years, he had advanced by 2 minor realms. This speed was not bad. What is this place? The soul power is still so dense, as if it's inexhaustible. After advancing 2 small realms consecutively and reaching the peak of the insight realm, Murong finally stopped cultivating temporarily. If he continued to cultivate, the soul power here could even allow him to break through to the heaven realm. Of course, the time required would definitely be longer. Murong quickly spread his divine telekinesis out. He discovered that this was a barren origin planet. Although it was extremely huge, there was nothing, not even ferocious beasts, according to Lu Ning's memory. The reason he became a soul cultivator was entirely because of this place. Back then, he was being chased by his enemies and accidentally entered this place. Due to his severe injuries, he fainted in the end. When he woke up, he suddenly realized that his soul had mutated. From then on, he was already a soul cultivator. It could actually mutate a person's soul. Murong's heart was filled with astonishment as a crazy idea sprouted from the bottom of his heart. If this place can really mutate one's soul, does that mean I can pull everyone from Glory Sect over? Although the probability was not high, if Shenzhen could produce a few more soul cultivators, with the guidance of a senior like Murong, those people would rise rapidly. By then, Shenzhen's ability would be even more terrifying. However, was this place really that magical? Murong was skeptical. He needed to verify before he got Zhao Jiqing and the rest to come over. Otherwise, what if an accident happened? After sensing it slightly, Murong felt that the soul power that enveloped the entire origin planet was coming from the depths of the origin planet. Therefore, he went straight underground and headed toward the core of the planet rapidly. The deeper he went, the stronger and more advanced the soul power became. This discovery made Murong, who had always been cautious, feel depressed. If he had known earlier, he would have gone deep underground to check it out before he started cultivating. If he had gone deep into the core of the planet, wouldn't he not need to spend hundreds of thousands of years to break through the 2 minor realms? However, these were already established facts. There was no point in dwelling on it. As he went deeper, Murong reached the core of the planet very quickly. At this moment, Murong's eyes suddenly opened up and a huge space appeared in front of him. The soul power in this space had already materialized. It was like a mist that filled the entire space. What's going on? Murong was shocked. He quickly took a few steps forward and entered the space. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The soul power that was like a mist drowned Murong. Furthermore, the soul power even permeated through the hundreds of millions of pores on Murong's body and entered his body rapidly. In the end, it flowed into his soul space and swarmed towards the soul ball. He didn't actively absorb it, but the soul power that entered his body was tens of millions of times more than the soul power that Murong normally absorbed. What if he actively absorbed it? Murong's heart stirred. The 3 soul balls in his soul space began to spin rapidly. Rumble! Instantly, the soul power that was like a mist rushed into Murong's soul space like a stormy sea. However, all of a sudden, Murong's expression changed. Following that, he stopped absorbing the soul power. This was because he realized that the soul power wasn't so pure. Instead, it contained an indescribable power. Evil. Yes, it was the power of evil. Originally, Murong hadn't noticed it. However, perhaps because the soul power here was too dense and the evil power was relatively more abundant, Murong, who was already very sensitive, sensed it immediately. Although he only felt that the indescribable power was a little evil, Murong hadn't discovered any side effects of the evil power yet. However, for safety's sake, Murong stopped absorbing the soul power. He continued to move forward. What's this? As Murong continued to move forward, a young man appeared in front of him in a short while. It was a young man who was around 25 or 26 years old. He was completely naked and had an evil smile on his face. At this moment, the man was sitting on the ground with his legs crossed. However, his limbs and head were locked by 5 gigantic chains. The other side of the chains was inserted into the boundless void. Moron, you clearly saw that the soul power that filled the entire planet came from this young man. What's going on? Moron, you was shocked. Who exactly was this young man? Why was he locked here? However, what shocked Moron you the most was the extent of his soul's power. Just the power of the soul that was emitted invisibly had filled the entire origin star. Moreover, the young man didn't seem to care at all. If he released all of his soul power, how terrifying would that be? Could it be that this is a soul cultivator who has stepped into the Tao level? This terrifying thought suddenly surfaced in Moron Yu's mind. Although Moron Yu had never seen a soul cultivator at the peak of the selfless realm, he had seen Lu Ning, who was at the 9th level of the selfless realm. Lu Ning was very powerful, but he was certain that Lu Ning was not even 1,000th of this young man. Perhaps he was not even 1/10,000th of this young man. Chapter 2147. Lu Ning was not even a 10,000th of this person before him. Basically, Moron Yu had already confirmed that this young man before him was a supreme being who had entered the Tao level. However, an existence of that level was definitely extremely rare, even in the entire universe, right? Why was he being locked up here? It was obvious that the young man had been suppressed here. If it was his own actions, Moron Yu would not believe it, even if he was beaten to death. That's not right. This person is just a soul. Moron Yu observed this young man. He suddenly realized that this person before him was just a soul. He did not have a physical body at all. In other words, this young man was actually just a soul. If a soul was trapped here, what about his physical body? If he could completely refine this soul, would his soul rush to the peak of the selfless realm in one go, or even break through to the Tao level? An absurd idea suddenly appeared in Moron Yu's mind. However, he quickly rejected this crazy but tempting idea. Even if he refined this young man, he probably could not refine him. Moreover, this young man was suppressed here. It was probably impossible for Moron Yu to refine him even if he wanted to. Swoosh! Just as Moron Yu was sizing up this young man before him, the young man who had his eyes tightly shut suddenly opened them. Shocked by the bright light in the young man's eyes, Moron Yu could not help but take a step back. In reality, this young man was a terrifying existence who had comprehended the Tao. Although he was suppressed, the disparity in power was too great. Naturally, it gave Moron Yu psychological pressure. Therefore, it was completely normal for him to have such a reaction. A human. Fortunately, the young man was suppressed. Although the bright light surged, it did not contain any pressure. However, his words caused Moron Yu to be slightly surprised. This young man was definitely not a human when he spoke like that. Although there were billions of races in the endless universe, only humans would be like this. No matter how he looked at it, the young man looked like a human. However, why would he say that? How long has it been? Someone finally appeared here. It's actually a soul cultivator. The young man laughed and muttered to himself. Boy, your soul is too weak. You actually dare to cultivate my soul clan's cultivation method? You've simply tarnished my soul clan. A murderous intent suddenly flashed across the young man's eyes. He shouted coldly at Moron Yu. Soul clan? This was the first time Moron Yu heard of this. Soul clan, was it a race? A clan that specialized in cultivating souls? Seeing Moron Yu's puzzled expression, the youth sneered, 9th rank Insight Realm? Boy, you've embarrassed the Soul Clan. No one in the Soul Clan is below the True Self Realm. You're simply a disgrace of the Soul Clan. Damn you. Before Moron Yu could figure out what was going on, he was already being cursed by the youth. He even wanted to greet the young man's. I'm a human, not a soul. Moron Yu coldly retorted, his heart burning with rage. Hee, those ants of the human race? Boy, you're too self-deprecating. You're actually proud of being a human? The young man sneered, and mocked Murong-Yu to his heart's content. Murong-Yu was furious. That's enough. I've never heard of the Soul Clan. Have you been suppressed for too long? Has the Soul Clan already perished? To tell you the truth, I haven't even met many soul cultivators since I was young. The Soul Clan perished. The young man's body trembled violently. However, he soon roared. How could the Soul Clan perish? The Soul Clan is the strongest clan in the world. The Soul Clan will definitely not perish. Looking at the roaring young man, Murong-Yu only sneered and did not speak. However, the young man was clearly dealt a heavy blow by Murong-Yu's words. After half a day, the young man finally calmed down. However, after calming down, he did not speak. Then, what is the Soul Clan a clan? Murong-Yu finally could not help but ask. This fellow said that he was a human and then a Soul Clan. Murong-Yu was completely confused. The young man glanced coldly at Murong-Yu and said coldly, "In the world, only the Soul Clan can awaken their souls. Once their souls have awakened, they will be a member of the Soul Clan, no matter what race they originally were. In other words, whether it's a human, dragon, or phoenix, as long as they can cultivate their souls, they will be part of the Soul Clan?" Murong-Yu asked in return. The young man nodded. Then, am I not a member of the Soul Clan? Murong-Yu rolled his eyes. Murong-Yu had been a human ever since he was born. Now that his race had suddenly changed, he really could not accept it. Moreover, there were other races in the Soul Clan. If Murong-Yu became part of the Soul Clan, wouldn't he be part of the same race as the other races? Seeing Murong-Yu's nonchalance, the young man sneered and said, "In the world, there are countless cultivators. There are those who cultivate their cultivation, those who cultivate their physical bodies. However, the most powerful is our Soul Clan. Back then, who didn't want to be a member of the Soul Clan? If anyone can unify the entire universe and dominate the world, it will be none other than our Soul Clan." Murong-Yu could not help but pour cold water on the young man. If the Soul Clan is really so powerful, why have I never heard of it? I even suspect that the Soul Clan has really been exterminated. Ignorant. The young man looked at Murong-Yu with incomparable disdain. That's because the Soul Clan has very few people. Moreover, the Soul Clan is full of high-end combat strength. People of your level are not qualified to come into contact with the Soul Clan. Damn you! Murong-Yu silently cursed the young man's damn grandfather in his heart. Kid, how long has it been since your soul awakened? The young man suddenly asked. Not long. Less than a reincarnation cycle, Murong-Yu said indifferently. The young man immediately pondered for a moment. Although you can cultivate your soul is too weak. I suggest you go to the soul pool in the Soul Clan's ancestral land to cleanse your soul. Murong-Yu's heart skipped a beat, but he still rolled his eyes. He had never heard of the Soul Clan at all and did not know if the Soul Clan still existed. He also did not know where the Soul Clan was. Don't worry, although you are a piece of trash in our Soul Clan. However, you're still a member of our Soul Clan. I will guide you to the Soul Clan. So kind? Murong-Yu looked at the young man with a doubtful gaze. Was he really so kind? Was he really so good to Murong-Yu just because he was a member of a Soul Clan? We Soul Clan members should help each other, because we are family. Therefore, you don't need to doubt me. Of course, it is normal for you to doubt me. However, when you reach the Soul Clan, you will not continue to doubt me, the young man said in a deep voice. Murong-Yu was still skeptical. After all, this young man was suppressed here, and his soul power contained evil power. Murong-Yu would not believe him no matter what. Then what's the matter with you? You mean these chains? If I said that I was the one who suppressed me here, would you believe me? The young man laughed evilly. Who would suppress themselves so ruthlessly? Murong-Yu shook his head. He did not believe it at all. Okay? Do you feel that my soul power is filled with evil power? It is because of this evil power that I suppress myself here. Otherwise, the evil power would control my soul and turn me into a person who commits all kinds of evil. Therefore, in order to prevent myself from becoming such a person, I can only suppress myself. When he said this, A trace of loneliness flashed across the depths of the young man's eyes. Seeing the youth's desolate expression, Muronyu started to believe that the youth was the one who'd suppressed him here. However, who did not know how to act. Muronyu still did not believe him completely. Swish! Right at this moment, a stream of light appeared in front of Muronyu out of thin air, giving him a fright. Just as he was about to react, Muronyu saw clearly that the stream of light was actually just an identity token. This is my identity token. With this token, you can enter the Soul Clan's territory. Don't look like you don't care. When you reach the Soul Clan, it will not be like this. Do you know what realm I am? A Tao Enlightenment realm powerhouse. Muronyu nodded. He had already guessed the young man's realm. However, do you know how many powerhouses of my level there are in the Soul Clan? How many people surpass me? At my level, I'm just the bottom of the barrel in the Soul Clan. The young man said indifferently with a look of indifference. Bottom of the barrel? Muronyu looked at the young man with a look of horror. According to the young man's words, didn't that mean that the entire Soul Clan's people were all people who comprehended Tao? If that was really the case, then the Soul Clan ruling the entire universe would not be something difficult, right? The young man nodded slightly, then continued, Of course, there are also rookies like you. Muronyu rolled his eyes. However, in front of the young man, he was indeed just a rookie. Grotto Underworld Realm Tier 9 was at least a difference of 4 major realms from the young man. Alright, I'll make a trip to the Soul Clan when I have time. Speaking of which, your soul force is so powerful. Can you help me a bit? Comprehending Tao is not needed anymore. Just raise my soul to peak selfless realm will do. Get lost. The young man glared at Muronyu crossly. Cultivation is all about relying on oneself, building a solid foundation, walking step by step. Only then can one be strong enough. Although I can help you directly raise to Deva Realm. My soul is filled with evil power. Hehe, if you're not afraid of death, I can help you raise to Deva Realm. Forget it. Muronyu smiled embarrassedly. Since the young man said so, Muronyu directly dismissed the idea of letting Zhao Jiqing and the others come over to awaken their souls. Otherwise, once their souls were invaded by the evil power, it would be terrible. After all, even an existence at the young man's level could only suppress the evil power. Muronyu could not deal with it at all. Right, I'm called Hundan. When Muronyu left, the young man finally introduced himself. Bastard, this name is unique. I'm Muronyu. Muronyu staggered, and he was almost stunned by the young man's unique name. Chapter 2148. In the end, Muronyu still left this place. After all, Hundan was only a soul and could not give Muronyu any benefits at all. Moreover, his soul was filled with evil power and could not help Muronyu. Even if he wanted to improve Muronyu's soul realm, Muronyu was unwilling. Because of the evil power, Muronyu completely dispelled the idea of letting Zhao Jiqing and the others come here to cultivate. He did not want the souls of Zhao Jiqing and the others to be filled with evil power. He did not know what would happen then. As for the matter of the soul race, Muronyu did not know if it was true or not for the time being. Muronyu had always been skeptical of Hundan's words. Even if the soul race really existed, was Hundan really so kind? Heavenly Mystery Palace. Little junior brother, you're finally back. If you didn't come back, Master would have cut me. When he saw Muronyu standing in front of him, alive and well, Grand Elder Tianshu could not help but heave a sigh of relief. The other Grand Elders and the others had the same reaction. Although they had received Muronyu's message long ago, they would not be completely at ease before they personally confirmed Muronyu's safety. Therefore, they had not given up on searching for Muronyu all these years. It was just that they could not find him. In fact, the place where Lu Ning brought Muronyu to was already the periphery of the Heavenly Mystery Palace. The place was rather remote, and the heaven and earth essence energy was not very good. Usually, no one would pass by there. The Seven Stars Grand Elder and the others could not mobilize the entire Heavenly Mystery Palace to search with too much fanfare. Little junior brother, how did you escape from Lu Ning? Where's Lu Ning? The Seven Stars Grand Elder and the others were rather curious about how Murong Yu could escape from Lu Ning. However, they were more concerned about Lu Ning. After all, Lu Ning was a terrifying existence at level 9 of the Selfless Realm. He was too much of a threat to them, and even the entire Heavenly Mystery Palace. They urgently needed to eradicate it. Fortunately, Murong Yu had already thought of a countermeasure. Lu Ning might have found out about my identity. He didn't kill me. Instead, he imprisoned me. In the end, not long ago, I got the chance to escape from him. Escape from the hands of a 9th-level, selfless realm powerhouse. Murong Yu? The Seven Stars Great Elder and the others were rather curious about how Murong Yu had managed to escape. They were even suspicious. However, although Murong Yu's words were a little forced, there were no flaws. Now that Lu Ning had become Murong Yu's puppet, the dead could not bear witness. No matter how much they suspected, it was useless. The Seven Stars Great Elder and the others knew that the truth was definitely not that simple. But since Murong Yu was unwilling to say more, they did not continue asking. After all, as long as Murong Yu returned safely, everything would be fine. I'll go see my masters first. After learning that Murong Yu had returned, he bade farewell to his 7 senior brothers and went to find 7 stars. Murong Yu naturally asked about Murong Yu's escape again. Murong Yu's answer was still the same. However, Murong Yu is still very happy about Murong Yu's increase in Cultivation Realm. All of them suggested that Murong Yu enter the Tianji Mystic Realm as soon as possible to train. It was said that the lower one's Cultivation Realm was, the more benefits one would obtain in the Tianji Mystic Realm. Of course, it was not infinitely low. After all, if one's Cultivation Realm was really too low, it would probably be difficult to move around in the Mystic Realm, right? After leaving Murong Yu's place, he did not immediately enter the Tianji Mystic Realm. Instead, he returned to the solar system for a period of time. After accompanying Zhao, Jiqing, and the others for a period of time, he returned to the Tianji Mystic Palace. However, when he wanted to find 7 stars, he discovered that 7 stars had left the Tianji Mystic Palace again. In fact, among the 7 stars Grand Elders, only Grand Elder Tian Shu was left to hold down the fort here. First senior brother Tian Shu, where did Master and the other senior brothers go? Murong Yu found Grand Elder Tian Shu and asked curiously. A supreme Dao weapon appeared recently, and Master and the others went to fight for it. Grand Elder Tian Shu said directly without any hesitation. Dao weapon. Murong Yu looked at Grand Elder Tian Shu in surprise. If he guessed correctly, the so-called Dao weapon was definitely the weapon of those Dao cultivators. The power of a weapon or magic treasure of that level was rather terrifying. After all, a powerhouse at the level of Dao was already the strongest cultivator in this universe. Legend has it that our Grandmaster had one, and it was also the only Dao weapon in our Tianji Mystic Palace. Relying on that Dao weapon, our Grandmaster killed a veteran Dao powerhouse who provoked him after breaking through to the Dao realm in one fell swoop. It was precisely because of that Dao weapon that even though our Grandmaster didn't walk far on the path of Dao, his combat strength was comparable to veteran Dao powerhouses and even surpassed many Dao powerhouses. Grand Elder Tian Shu said with a look of admiration. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. Only a Dao powerhouse like the Tianji Mystic Palace's founder could possibly use a Dao weapon. Otherwise, even if it was given to them, they wouldn't be able to unleash its power. Even whether they could pick it up was a problem. Since it's the birth of a Dao weapon, then masters are probably just going to join in the fun, right? Murong Yu snickered. The birth of a Dao weapon would definitely cause many factions and powerhouses to fight for it. Dao powerhouses would all come to blows. In front of that level of powerhouse, the peak of Selfless Realm was seriously not enough. Grand Elder Tian Shu glared at Murong Yu. Little junior brother, some things are better left known. There's no need to say it. How much does this hurt your self-esteem? Murong Yu just snickered. Finally, Grand Elder Tian Shu still opened the Tianji Mystic Realm and pushed Murong Yu inside. The Tianji Mystic Palace was actually suppressing above the Tianji Mystic Realm. Only in the depths of the Tianji Mystic Palace was the only entrance into the Tianji Mystic Realm. And this entrance was already sealed off by the Tianji Mystic Palace. Without a specific method, there was no way to open this entrance. In the Tianji Mystic Palace, apart from the founder, only the 7 stars and the 7 stars Grand Elder had the qualifications to open the entrance. The others did not have the qualifications to approach at all. The Tianji Mystic Realm was actually another space, an enormous space comparable to the endless starry sky. Or rather, that was a world, another universe. The Tianji Mystic Realm was extremely huge. Even the founder of the Tianji Mystic Palace had not walked to the end of the Mystic Realm yet either. They only knew that the place where the Tianji Mystic Palace's entrance entered, the danger was relatively lower. The strength of the fierce beasts was generally not high. Swoosh! Morong Yu seemed to have entered a transmission array. After the scenery before his eyes changed, the next instant, he discovered that he appeared on an essence star. This was an essence star equivalent to the Milky Way star, the level of the Tianji star. Divine sense rapidly spread out, instantly covering the entire essence star. Apart from some animals that did not have much attack power, there was actually not a single fierce beast. This place was the Tianji Mystic Palace's entrance, after all. The Tianji Mystic Palace's powerhouses had probably cleared the nearby fierce beasts long ago, right? Otherwise, anyone who had the qualifications to enter the Tianji Mystic Realm was a genius of the Tianji Mystic Palace. If they were finished off by fierce beasts right after entering the Mystic Realm, the Tianji Mystic Palace's loss would be huge. Slightly identifying the direction, Morong Yu immediately soared into the air, rapidly leaving this essence star where the entrance was, and flew forward. After soul, cultivation, and physical body all reached level 9 Grotto Underworld Realm, Morong Yu's combat power already reached level 2 Deva Realm strength. Therefore, his speed was also rather fast. Even some level 2 Deva Realm cultivator's speed was far inferior to his. The further forward, the denser the heaven and earth essence energy. However, no matter how dense the heaven and earth essence energy near the entrance was, it was also limited. Furthermore, there were often people passing by here. There were no treasures that caught the eye nearby at all. Along the way, Morong Yu already encountered some Deva Realm level fierce beasts appearing very soon. The heaven and earth essence energy here was already rather dense, but it was still not enough. Furthermore, Morong Yu did not need heaven and earth essence energy to enter the Tianji Mystic Realm, but to search for treasures. Wasn't it said that every person who entered the Tianji Mystic Realm would return with a full load in the end? The worst would break through 1 or 2 minor realms. That's right, Morong Yu wanted to break through realms. It was just that he did not hold too much hope. After all, in the world, treasures that possessed enormous soul force were seriously too few. Boom! A furry black claw fiercely smashed the void, slapping down towards Morong Yu's entire person with incomparable ferocity. The one who attacked was a fierce beast whose strength reached level 2 Deva Realm. Come at me. Morong Yu entered the Tianji Mystic Realm to train, and fighting with fierce beasts was also a part of the training. Therefore, he did not dodge, but went straight for it. Boom! 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 Claws and fists were exchanged. When Morong Yu raised his strength to the maximum, he was only able to fight to a draw with this fierce beast. In fact, Morong Yu did not even take out the Shadow Stepping Palace, Chaos Blade, and other treasures. Instead, every punch landed on flesh. However, the fierce beast's physical body was also quite terrifying. After a round of attacks, Morong Yu's physical body was almost smashed into pieces. After all, although his physical body was strong, it was only at level 9 Insight Realm. The fierce beast's physical body was at least at level 1 Deva Realm. In the end, Morong Yu only used the strength of his physical body and the peak of his cultivation to kill this fierce beast. This also made Morong Yu feel good all over. Previously, he had only been raising his cultivation level and did not have any battles. After a battle, it allowed him to control his new strength more freely, and his foundation was more solid. Cultivating blindly is really not beneficial. I have to fight and cultivate at the same time. Murong thought in his heart and took the initiative to search for fierce beasts. In the following time, he kept fighting with fierce beasts. Basically, just relying on his physical body and cultivation, level 2 Deva Realm fierce beasts were no match for him. If he used Soul Attack, Chaos Blade, and Shadow Stepping Palace, even level 3 Deva Realm fierce beasts were no match for him. There was even one time when he killed a ferocious beast that had reached the 4th level of the Celestial Realm. Chapter 2149. The Tianji Secret Realm is really a treasure trove. Murong was hiding on top of a mountain. He wanted to look down at the valley below, but he sighed in his heart. Along the way, apart from fighting a large number of ferocious beasts, Murong had also collected many heavenly treasures. Since he was not in a deep area, the heavenly treasures were not of high grades. They were only at the Celestial Realm. However, many of the treasures were of great help to Celestial Realm or Insight Realm powerhouses. There were good items that could improve one's comprehension ability, temper one's body, and even temper one's strength. There were even items that could directly raise one's cultivation level. Murong had collected dozens of treasures of these grades along the way. Although these treasures were almost useless to him, he was not alone. However, he was not alone. Zhao, Jiqing, Murong Xian, and the others all needed him. Moreover, there was a large Shenzhen behind him. Therefore, he wanted to collect as many of these items as possible. Now, there was a stalk of Tianluo grass under the valley ahead. The Tianluo grass was an extremely rare heavenly treasure. If it was mixed with several other medicinal herbs, it could be refined into a higher-grade medicinal pill than the celestial pill. It could help a celestial realm powerhouse to break through to the true self realm. Murong only needed enough strength or soul power to continuously break through, but Zhao, Jiqing, and the others could not. They needed a certain amount of external assistance, and alchemical pills were naturally the best way to do that. However, there was a peak celestial realm ferocious beast entrenched near the Tianluo grass. Murong had been hiding here for half a month. However, that ferocious beast did not leave. In fact, if Murong wanted to obtain the Tianluo grass, he could directly summon Lu Ning, a level 9 selfless Rel puppet. Lu Ning could kill that ferocious beast with a finger. However, Murong did not want to do that. Doing that would not help him gain experience at all. He needed to obtain the Tianluo grass with his own strength. Anyway, he had plenty of time now. Another half a month passed, but the beast still showed no signs of leaving. Murong finally decided to make his move. Although he had a lot of time, he couldn't possibly waste it on this Sky Luo grass, right? Thus, Murong concealed himself and carefully entered the valley. He gradually approached the ferocious beast. The beast was sleeping soundly and did not realize the arrival of Murong. However, even if it was just sleeping, this vicious beast still exuded a powerful aura. It attacked Murong, causing him to feel an enormous pressure. It was extremely difficult for him to approach it. However, he still managed to get close to the Sky Luo grass in the end. Now, it was already within reach. Murong took a deep breath and slowly reached out his hand to grab the Sky Luo grass. Wong. The moment his hand touched the Sky Luo grass, his hand seemed to have touched something. At the same time, ripples appeared in the void around the Tianluo grass. Oh no! Murong's expression changed abruptly. At the same time, the ferocious beast at the peak of the celestial realm that had been sleeping soundly near the Sky Luo grass woke up and opened its eyes. Roar! The moment it opened its eyes, the ferocious beast saw Murong's hand grabbing the Sky Luo grass. Immediately, the ferocious beast roared angrily. At the same time, an incomparably frightening aura erupted from its body and rushed towards Murong like a violent storm. One of the ferocious beast's claws carried a terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth. It was extremely fast and ferocious. It slapped down on Murong Yu's head and face. Murong Yu shook his head and immediately used the Shadow Stepping Palace to meet the ferocious beast's claw. At the same time, he exerted force in his hand and was about to pluck the sky luo grass. Boom! In a flash, the ferocious beast had already slapped the Shadow Stepping Palace with its claw. Although the Shadow Stepping Palace was an origin tool at the peak of the celestial realm. However, after withstanding this attack, Murong Yu's soul power was instantly reduced by 1/10. The Shadow Stepping Palace's defensive power required the support of soul power. However, although the soul power was severely depleted, it still successfully blocked the ferocious beast's attack in the end. In that split second, Murong Yu had successfully plucked the Empyrean grass from the ground. Seeing this, the ferocious beast was furious. An even more terrifying aura erupted from its body and rushed towards Murong Yu violently. Bang! 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 The ferocious beast's terrifying attack was also like a storm that bombarded the Shadow Stepping Palace. The ferocious beast's combat power was too terrifying. Every time he withstood it, Murong Yu's soul power would be reduced by 1/10. In other words, Murong Yu could only withstand 10 attacks at most. After 10 times, the Shadow Stepping Palace would not be able to display the defensive power of a peak of the celestial realm. Without the Shadow Stepping Palace's defense, Murong Yu would not be able to withstand the ferocious beast's attack at all. Fortunately, the Sky Luo grass was already in his hands. Quickly throwing the Sky Luo grass into the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu immediately began his soul attack. 10,000 waves of soul. Rumble. The soul power poured out of Murong Yu's soul space like a flood that broke through a dam, directly strangling the ferocious beast's soul. Although the ferocious beast was a ferocious beast, it could still sense the arrival of danger. The ferocious beast's claws that were attacking Murong Yu suddenly stopped. At the same time, it roared and fiercely attacked with its claws in front of it. With a boom, the terrifying impact directly shattered Murong Yu's soul attack. The disparity in strength was too great. Even the soul attack would be instantly crushed. However, before the ferocious beast could breathe a sigh of relief, another powerful soul attack blasted over. Moreover, the ferocious beast was shocked to discover that this soul attack was even more powerful than the first one. Its lethality was even more terrifying. That was the essence of the 10,000 waves of soul. The 10,000 waves of soul was not Murong Yu's soul skill or combat skill. It was taught by Hundan. It was said to be the secret skill of the Soul Tribe. The secret skill of the Soul Tribe was taught to Murong Yu just like that. This made Murong Yu rather suspicious if this combat skill was really the secret skill of the Soul Tribe. However, Murong Yu did not care if it was the secret skill of the Soul Tribe or not. He only knew that the combat skill was relatively terrifying. 10,000 waves of soul, as the name suggested, was to continuously strangle the enemy with layers of soul power. If one could cultivate it to the great achievement, one could launch 10,000 waves of soul attack. Moreover, the most important thing was that every wave of soul attack would be stacked with the previous wave of attack. For example, if the lethality of the first wave of 10,000 waves of soul was only 1, then the lethality of the second wave would definitely be greater than 1, or even 2. The first 1 or 2 waves were fine, but what if it was stacked 10,000 times? How terrifying would the lethality be? Just this stacking ability alone had already surpassed any of Murong Yu's soul combat skills. Moreover, this 10,000 waves of soul power only needed to launch one attack. Just like the Saint's Soul Slash, if he wanted to attack 10,000 times, then he had to attack 10,000 times. And the lethality this time could not be stacked. Therefore, Murong Yu chose to cultivate it without hesitation. Finally, a few days ago, he succeeded in cultivating it. Although he could only release 10 waves of soul waves for the time being, it was already enough. Roar! The peak of Heaven Realm beast roared angrily and continuously launched attacks to shatter the soul attack. In Murong, you had already taken the opportunity to explode out. Of course, Murong Yu even had the thought of killing this beast. But the disparity in strength between both parties was too great. The power of shadow trample might not even be able to step on the other party's shadow. Moreover, didn't you see that this guy could even shatter the soul power with every punch? Therefore, Moronyu quit while he was ahead. After collecting the Skynet grass, he immediately retreated. However, the Skynet grass was also very important to this beast. Whether it could break through to the realm of true self depended entirely on this Skynet grass. Therefore, the beast roared and chased after him. Waves of frightening energy continuously bombarded him, causing the heavens and earth to shatter. Moronyu didn't dare to enter the He-Tu and the Luo tome. He was afraid that he'd rush into the turbulent space. However, with the existence of Shadow Trample Palace, Moronyu could still resist the beast's attacks for the time being. At this time, the 3 soul balls in his soul space were frantically spinning, quickly devouring the soul power, drifting in the endless chaos. However, even so, the soul power that was devoured could not compare to the soul power that was consumed. Moreover, the beast's speed was faster than Moronyu's. Before he could escape far, Moronyu had already been caught by the beast. Then, it was a fat beating. Moronyu was beaten until he grimaced in pain, and his soul power was rapidly decreasing. Only less than 30% was left. If this continued, as long as he was beaten a few more times, he would definitely be beaten to death. Blade of Chaos. Shadow Trample Palace. Moronyu gritted his teeth and started a desperate counterattack. He did not want to attack, but the beast did not let him go. The Chaotic Force and Shadow Trample Palace were activated at the same time. Even though the beast was strong, it was still affected by the Blade of Chaos. At the same time, Moronyu also stepped on its shadow. The beast was instantly stunned. Moronyu was pleasantly surprised, and he poured all his strength into the Blade of Chaos. Then, he ruthlessly slashed the beast's body. Bang! The ferocious beast was directly sent flying. However, the Blade of Chaos only left a white mark on the beast's body. The beast's body was covered with power, and Moronyu's strength was unable to break through its defense. Run! Moronyu was stunned at first, then he reacted. He turned around and ran. Roar! However, at this moment, a thunderous roar came from in front of him. An even more terrifying aura rushed over, and it suppressed Moronyu's soul to the point that it trembled. In the next moment, Moronyu's pupils shrank. A small claw shattered the void, and it quickly blasted the Shadow Trample Palace. The moment the Shadow Trample Palace was blasted, Moronyu realized that his soul power had been depleted. The Shadow Trample Palace made a crack sound, and it directly shattered. Chapter 2150. The Shadow Stepping Palace was an origin tool at the peak of the Celestial Being realm, and Moronyu had used all his strength to defend it. How could it have been destroyed? What kind of terrifying power was that? Moronyu's heart sank in an instant. However, his reaction wasn't slow at all. With a thought, he retreated explosively. At the same time, the ferocious beast at the peak of the Celestial Being realm that was chasing him also turned around and quickly fled into the distance. However, although they were fast, the ferocious beast that destroyed the Shadow Stepping Palace was even faster. Moronyu only saw a blur in front of his eyes. A small claw suddenly tore through the void and directly slapped the ferocious beast at the peak of the Celestial Being realm in front of him. With a poof, the ferocious beast at the peak of the Celestial Being realm that had chased after Moronyu and had no way to escape was directly slapped into a pile of mud. Moronyu's heart turned cold. Even the ferocious beast at the peak of the Celestial Being realm could not withstand it and was killed in one blow, let alone him. A ferocious beast at the true self realm. 10,000 layers of soul waves. Moronyu used the little soul power that he had just devoured to once again display his strongest soul attack. At the same time, he had already taken out the Chaos Blade, which erupted with a terrifying chaotic power and crazily slashed at the ferocious beast of the true self realm. At this time, Moron, you finally saw clearly what this ferocious beast at the true self realm was. It was the size of a squirrel. However, its body exuded a terrifying aura. Its eyes were filled with a ruthless and emotionless light. All Moron you could see in its eyes was a murderous intent. This was a ferocious beast that was murderous by nature, and it was very powerful. It could only see its claw fiercely slamming into the void in front of it. Moron, you clearly heard a poof sound. The first layer of his soul attack, 10,000 layers of soul waves, was shattered just like that. In fact, before the second tier could be born, it had already died in the womb. It had been strangled in the cradle. After shattering Moron Yu's soul attack with one claw, the vicious beast's other claw fiercely slammed against the blade of chaos that was slashing down at it. Clang! After an earth-shattering explosion, the chaos blade was sent flying. However, it did not suffer any damage. This item that Moron Yu considered to be a Dao artifact was not something that a mere heaven-tier origin artifact, like the Shadow Trampling Palace, could compare to, even though it was only an incomplete Dao artifact. The squirrel-like beast looked at the Chaos Blade with astonishment in its eyes when it saw that the Chaos Blade didn't explode in one blow. He even stopped attacking Moron Yu. Moron Yu took the opportunity to rush into the distance. At the same time, Moron Yu took the time to take a look. He saw the squirrel looking at the Chaos Blade that had been sent flying in the air with a look of ecstasy. Although the beast's spiritual intelligence was relatively low, it was not a puppet and had its own emotions. It also had emotions such as anger and surprise. Seeing the beast's expression, Moron Yu knew that things were not good. With a thought, he wanted to withdraw the Chaos Blade. But at this moment, the ferocious beast had already stretched out its claws and clawed at the Chaos Blade in the air. Whoosh! Before Moron Yu could withdraw the Chaos Blade, the beast's claw had already grabbed the Chaos Blade in its hand. Then, with his swoosh, the beast gave up on killing Moron Yu and disappeared from Moron Yu's sight. What's going on? Moron Yu was suddenly in a mess. A beast actually snatched his life origin artifact? Or was it a life origin artifact? For beasts, they did not need cultivation techniques, weapons, or magic treasures. Their most powerful weapon was their physical body. So, why did this beast snatch the Chaos Blade? Moreover, it had a look of ecstasy. After being stunned for a moment, Moron Yu immediately chased after it. Not to mention that the Chaos Blade was a Taoist instrument. Even if it was not a Taoist instrument, it was still Moron Yu's life origin artifact. Since his life origin artifact was snatched away, it was also a huge blow to Moron Yu's mind. The beast's speed was extremely fast, and there was no trace of it at this time. However, Moron Yu could see the aura left behind by the beast. But if he followed the aura left behind by the beast, it would be too slow. However, the Chaos Blade was Moron Yu's life origin artifact. Within a certain range, Moron Yu could sense it. Therefore, he followed the direction of the Chaos Blade and flew in a straight line. But soon his speed slowed down. Because he had already entered the territory of the true self realm, ferocious beasts. If he dared to fly past here quickly, he was afraid that he would be killed by a large group of true self realm beasts. Fortunately, Moron Yu could turn invisible. In the end, Moron Yu concealed his figure and continued to advance, regardless of rain or shine. However, Moron Yu's footsteps still slowed down. There was no other way. At this time, there were already high-level true self-realm beasts near him. Existences at this level might be able to kill Moron Yu with a sneeze. And the beast that snatched the Chaos Blade was still going deeper and deeper. This made Moron Yu's balls hurt. Where is this guy going with the Chaos Blade? Moron Yu could feel that his connection with the Chaos Blade was getting weaker and weaker. In other words, the beast was getting farther and farther away from him. If this continued, Moron Yu would definitely lose track of that vicious beast. After a while, Moron Yu clearly felt that the beast's speed slowed down. Previously, Moron Yu estimated that this beast had already reached the true self realm. But all along the way, it didn't slow down at all even when passing over the territory of high-level true self-realm beasts. At that time, Morong Yu determined that the squirrel was at least high-level true self-realm. Now that it had slowed down, it probably already entered the territory of the selfless realm beasts. Only those more powerful, ferocious beasts would be able to subdue the squirrel. Morong Yu gritted his teeth and finally decided to give up the huge temptation of using Lu Ning as a puppet. This kind of situation was actually also a kind of experience. Carefully, Morong Yu had already entered the territory of the selfless realm beasts. At this time, his speed was even slower and more careful. But he still had a determined look on his face and continued to move forward with firm steps. It was said that the Tianji secret realm had no end. There were even beasts that had comprehended the Tao in the distance. In this world, it wasn't only beasts or demon races that could comprehend the Tao. Beasts could also comprehend the Tao. Heaven and earth were the most fair and wouldn't favor any race. At this time, Morong Yu's connection with the Chaos Blade had been cut off. This showed that the distance between the beast and Morong Yu had been greatly widened. Morong Yu could only rely on the aura left behind by letting go to track it now. However, Morong Yu had already calmed down. Tianji's deduction couldn't predict the good or bad of this matter. But there was a glimmer of hope, and this glimmer of hope contained an opportunity. If Morong Yu could seize this opportunity, it would definitely be of great benefit to him. So he was quite calm. At this time, Morong Yu suddenly received a message from the distant solar system. The skeleton finally came out of seclusion. Third level of the celestial realm. After coming out of seclusion, the skeleton directly challenged Tianming. Although Tianming had a lot of resources to cultivate and even obtained a powerful magic weapon in the Xingyang Dao Mansion. But he was only at the second level of the celestial realm and was no match for the skeleton at all. He was severely injured by Tianming. In the end, he fled back to the solar system with serious injuries. However, the skeleton didn't give up and wanted to unify the entire Milky Way star field. He didn't even care about the Tianji Palace branch. However, the skeleton still gave the solar system a period of time. During this time, he wouldn't touch the solar system. He wanted the solar system to really submit to him. After becoming strong, he began to pay attention to benevolence and righteousness. But deep down, he was still just a robber who killed without batting an eyelid. Morong Yu couldn't guarantee that the others in the solar system wouldn't be forced to submit to the skeleton's tyrannical power. But Shenzhen would never submit. If it didn't submit, the skeleton would definitely make a move on Shenzhen to make an example out of him. Shenzhen had a big family and business, so he couldn't evacuate the solar system for a while. In fact, the skeleton wouldn't give them a chance to evacuate at all. Morong Yu frowned slightly. This matter was a bit difficult to handle. The skeleton wasn't afraid of the Tianji Palace at all. Should he ask the Tianji Palace to destroy the skeleton directly? Morong Yu just had this thought in his mind, but he quickly cut it off. Wasn't there still time? With his current strength, he could definitely kill the skeleton. If it really didn't work, he would teleport back and kill the skeleton himself. Moreover, with the huge pressure from the skeleton, Shenzhen and the others had more motivation to cultivate. 100 years. Morong Yu's lips curled into a sneer. The skeleton gave the solar system 100 years. Then, I'll let you live for another 100 years. Morong Yu sneered in his heart, and once again flew after the aura of the dire beast that snatched the Chaos Blade. A year later, Morong Yu had already entered the territory of the selfless realm level 9 dire beast. In this place, even if he used the puppet Lu Ning, it didn't seem to be of much use. However, to Morong Yu's relief, he finally contacted the Chaos Blade again. Along the way, Morong Yu also collected a lot of treasures. He collected countless true self-realm and selfless realm treasures of heaven and earth. As such, even if Morong Yu didn't get anything, he could still cultivate a large number of powerhouses for Shenzhen. What's going on? Morong Yu stopped in his tracks. In the distance, he saw two huge primary stars suspended in the starry sky. Strictly speaking, it was not two primary stars, but a primary star that had been split in half. Although this primary star had been split in half, it was still full of vitality. Moreover, the two halves of the primary star still maintained the appearance before it was split. There was only a fist-sized, flat, and extremely smooth crack in the middle. Most importantly, Morong, you could sense that the Chaos Blade was on one of the planets. Chapter 2151. Looking from afar, the gigantic planet should have been split into two halves by someone with a sword or a saber. With Murong Yu's current ability, he might be able to destroy the gigantic primordial star, but he couldn't split it into two halves with a saber. However, to split it into two halves with a saber, both halves were even and smooth with the same gap. That would require extremely powerful ability. Selfless state? Or was it the masterpiece of an expert who had comprehended Tao? Murong Yu didn't have extra time to think about that. After all, he was still concerned about the Chaos Blade. Swoosh! Just then a gigantic ray of light shot up to the sky from the half of the primordial star in front. Then, it shattered the void and slashed towards Murong Yu at lightning speed. Murong Yu was shocked, and he thought he was discovered. He was in a state of invisibility. Hence, in a hurry, he unleashed his speed and flew to the side. Boom! Just as Murong Yu rushed out of the primordial star that he was in, the primordial star had already been split into pieces by the terrifying saber radiance. That was the attack of the Chaos Blade. Murong Yu could clearly feel the power of chaos that the saber radiance carried. However, when did the Chaos Blade become so powerful? Of course, the more powerful one was, the more power they could unleash from the Chaos Blade. However, Murong Yu could feel that it wasn't because of the user, but because the Chaos Blade itself had become more powerful. The edge of chaos was originally incomplete, but it suddenly became even more powerful. Then, there was only one possibility. The Chaos Blade had mixed with more fragments. Boom! 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 Just as these thoughts flashed past Murong Yu's mind, the primordial star in front of him that was split into two halves exploded with saber radiance and other power radiance. There were people fighting in front of him. Moreover, all of them were extremely powerful. Merely the aftermath of the power that escaped from them crushed the void nearby. The suppressive aura emanating from it caused even Murong Yu's soul to tremble. At the very least, they were all peak stage, selfless realm powerhouses fighting. Murong Yu's expression was solemn as he quickly retreated. He did not want to be minced into pieces by the shock waves from the attacks of these people, or dire beasts. As the battle continued, Murong Yu continued to retreat. After retreating far away, Murong Yu finally saw who was fighting, a group of ferocious beasts. Judging from the light emitted from their bodies, they were at least high-level, selfless realm, and among them was the squirrel who had previously snatched the Chaos Blade. Wasn't that squirrel at the true self realm? How did he have high-level, selfless realm strength? Murong Yu really couldn't figure it out. All in all, there were a total of over 100, close to 200 high-level, selfless realm, ferocious beasts in a great battle. However, what were they fighting for? Murong Yu really wanted to know, but it was impossible for him to know. This was because he couldn't get close to it at all. He couldn't even extend his divine sense. Best if both sides suffer great losses and all die. Murong Yu thought evilly in his heart. After all, if those ferocious beasts didn't die out, Murong Yu couldn't snatch back the Chaos Blade at all. After more than half a day, the battle of the ferocious beasts was still continuing. But at this time, Murong Yu discovered that the sky above the two halves of the Yuan star was suddenly covered with dark clouds. Crackle, crackle! The speed of the dark clouds appearing was extremely fast, virtually in a blink of an eye. Reckon that those ferocious beasts in the great battle hadn't reacted yet, right? One after another, extremely terrifying lightning suddenly burst out from above the dark clouds, enveloping the entire Yuan star instantly. The lightning was glaring. Murong Yu had no choice but to close his eyes. After he felt that the lightning disappeared, he slowly opened his eyes again. But the moment he opened his eyes, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. The battle that was originally happening on the Yuan Star had already vanished without a trace. The most important thing was that those ferocious beasts that were originally fighting were all gone. Yes, all of them were gone. However, Morong, you could feel that the Chaos Blade still existed on the other half of the Yuan Star. Morong, you try to recall the Chaos Blade. As expected, without the obstruction of the ferocious beasts, the Chaos Blade turned into a ray of flowing light, shuttled through boundless space-time, and appeared in Morong Yu's hand in the end. When he took a closer look, the Chaos Blade was indeed longer than before. Similar to Morong Yu's previous thought, it should have merged with another fragment. The power that the Chaos Blade could unleash had become even more powerful. However, it was still limited by Morong Yu's own ability. With his current realm and ability, he couldn't unleash the Chaos Blade to the level of Selfless Realm. The Chaos Blade was still there, but what about the ferocious beasts? Morong Yu saw that the dark clouds that enveloped the two halves of the Yuan Star had already disappeared without him noticing. The lightning that drowned the entire Yuan Star had also disappeared. Shall I go and take a look? Morong Yu thought for a while and decided to go and take a look in the end. However, the two halves of the Yuan Star were really too strange. Morong Yu was very careful and only approached the two halves of the Yuan Star after half a day. They're all dead. When Morong Yu entered half of the Yuan Star, he was immediately shocked, because he clearly saw more than 100 piles of ashes. They were clearly the ferocious beasts that were originally fighting. However, what puzzled him was that these ferocious beasts were all burned to death by the lightning. However, the things near them weren't damaged at all. Apart from those things that were shattered by the aftermath of their battle, the lightning didn't damage the things on the Yuan Star at all. It seemed that the lightning was only targeted at outsiders. Moreover, Morong Yu also discovered that the battle between these ferocious beasts with terrifying abilities. Only a small portion of vegetation or small hills were destroyed by them. However, those mountains and the like didn't move at all, not to mention the entire Yuan Star. A huge battle between a large group of high-level selfless realm ferocious beasts couldn't damage this Yuan Star. Then, who split this Yuan Star into two halves with a sword or a blade? How terrifying was that person's ability exactly? He was at least an expert who was enlightened. Morong Yu was shocked. Could it be related to the owner of the Chaos Blade? This thought suddenly surfaced in Morong Yu's mind. The fragment that the Chaos Blade had just merged with not long ago was highly likely to be on this Yuan Star. Perhaps the squirrel knew the reason for the fragment, so it snatched the Blade of Chaos and brought it here. However, for some unknown reason, a large group of ferocious beasts started fighting here. The Chaos Blade is a Taoist weapon. Then its original owner should be an expert who was enlightened. Morong Yu thought to himself and extended his divine thought towards the distance. However, he soon realized that the primordial star suppressed his divine telekinesis greatly. His divine telekinesis could not extend too far. Moreover, Morong Yu had a vague feeling. This Yuan Star seemed to be shrouded by something. It was as if someone was spying on him in the dark, but he didn't discover anything. This made him rather uncomfortable and even had a stifling feeling. Thinking back to the dark clouds and lightning that suddenly appeared previously, Morong Yu guessed that this Yuan Star was definitely shrouded by a large array or restriction. However, that large array or restriction should be very advanced. Otherwise, it was impossible that Morong Yu couldn't sense it. Ferocious beasts wouldn't set up any array or restriction. In other words, a cultivator should have stayed in this Yuan Star before. In fact, a long time ago, this place might have been a very powerful sect or force. A large array that could even kill a selfless realm ferocious beast in one move, then this sect was at least selfless realm level, and there might even be in existence who was enlightened. The founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace could leap from an ordinary cultivator to a peerless genius with superb talent, and even quickly enlightened. Then, did he encounter a certain expert who was enlightened in the Heavenly Mystery Palace? Or was it a relic of a sect with an enlightened expert like this? Otherwise, ordinary heaven and earth treasures couldn't be so heaven-defying. Even if he had such a heaven-defying treasure, if he didn't have the relevant inheritance or cultivation method, he definitely wouldn't have been able to improve rapidly and even build such a huge heavenly mystery palace. Thinking of this, Morong Yu's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Then, he slowly and carefully walked towards the depths of the Yuan Star. Fortunately, this place only suppressed divine thought. There was no suppression on strength, flying, or anything like that. The deeper he went, the more it confirmed Morong Yu's guess, because there were traces of man-made everywhere here. Not long after, a dilapidated building appeared in his line of sight. However, it was a pity that there was nothing in this building. However, as Morong Yu continued to go deeper, there were more and more such buildings. It was just that they were all dilapidated. All of a sudden, Morong Yu stopped, because a large stretch of buildings appeared in front of him. There were short rooms, but most of them were majestic halls. Moreover, these buildings were different from the dilapidated ones he had encountered before. These buildings were all intact. In fact, Morong Yu even saw cultivators coming and going, cultivating and sparring on the facade of the buildings. They were all humans, wearing the same clothes. They should be from the same sect. He couldn't see the light of power that they were emitting. However, Morong Yu could feel that the disciples of this sect were very powerful. The weakest disciples were at the true self realm, and most of them were at the selfless realm. As for whether there were cultivators at a higher realm, Morong Yu couldn't tell for the time being. The front was bustling, but the back was dilapidated. That powerful sect was here. How could they allow this planet to be so dilapidated? How could they allow those ferocious beasts to fight here and not kill them? This was clearly like two completely different worlds. However, Morong Yu clearly saw that the sect was right in front of him. It really existed. However, no one noticed Morong Yu's arrival. They didn't even look at him. It was as if they directly treated Morong Yu as invisible. One must know that Morong Yu didn't continue to be invisible at this time. Strange. Quite strange. Chapter 2152. After standing outside for a while, the people in the sect did not notice Morong Yu at all. It was as though they were in two different space-time. However, those people were right in front of Morong Yu. He did not feel that they were in a different space-time. It was so strange. Morong Yu could not help but take a step forward in the end. However, before he took this step, he had already made preparations. He raised all his strength to the maximum. At the same time, he took out various treasures to protect himself. Buzz. When Morong Yu stepped into the sect, there was a slight ripple in the surrounding space. However, although Morong Yu noticed it, he did not pay too much attention to it. At that moment, he had already entered the sect. There were some disciples cultivating not far in front of him. However, they still acted as though they did not see Morong Yu. They ignored him. Morong Yu felt that it was even stranger. Therefore, he continued to walk along the main road. In his eyes, everything was rather real. There was nothing different about it. Whoosh! At that moment, a figure turned into a stream of light and shot towards him from afar. It was so fast that Morong Yu did not even have time to react before the figure crashed into him. At that moment, Morong Yu's strength exploded. That person's strength was obviously much stronger than his. If he was hit like this, his physical body would be smashed into pieces. Morong Yu could not help but feel angry. That person clearly had the strength to dodge, but why did he crash into him? Something's not right. While Morong Yu's heart was filled with anger, his strength had also increased. However, at that moment, he realized that he did not feel like he had been hit. However, the person who bumped into him had already passed through his body and appeared behind him. After that, the figure vanished into the horizon in an instant. I became transparent. Morong Yu's first reaction was this. Therefore, he stretched out his hand and touched himself. But he did not become transparent. He was still a real existence. Since it wasn't him who had become transparent, then it had to be them. A terrifying thought suddenly appeared in Morong Yu's mind. He slowly reached out his hand and touched a huge rock beside him. Whoosh! When he pressed down with his hand, Morong Yu's body immediately staggered. There was simply no point for him to exert force. At this moment, his large hand had already sunk deep into the boulder. Murong Yu's face suddenly changed, and the terrifying thought in his heart became even more intense. He took a step forward and arrived beside a building. Then he stretched out his hand and pressed down. It was still as if he was pressing on air. From his point of view, his hand had already entered the building. In order to verify his guess, Murong Yu moved to stand before one of the cultivators. Likewise, he extended his hand and pressed it down. Whoosh! His hand went straight through the cultivator's body. However, the cultivator didn't change at all. It was fake. In other words, the scene that Murong Yu saw was all fake. It didn't exist at all. These were just some portraits or even projections. Yes, they were projections. However, what was going on with these projections? Murong Yu could feel that these projections were all real. They were the miniature versions of a certain sect when it was still alive. However, Murong Yu knew that in some places, due to various special reasons, a portrait of a certain moment would be constantly repeated. What he was seeing now should be such a situation. He didn't even know when that sect had existed. Moreover, Murong Yu guessed that the sect should have already left this place or been exterminated by someone. Otherwise, if they were still here, there wouldn't be a projection here. All of a sudden, Murong Yu noticed that everyone in the projection had raised their heads to look at the horizon in shock. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he followed everyone's gaze and looked up. He saw a gigantic saber gleam shattering the void, and with a terrifying speed, it slashed towards the primordial star that he was in. Whoosh! Murong Yu saw a flash of light, and the saber gleam had already slashed on the primordial star. There wasn't a single sound, but Murong Yu saw that the people from that sect had all been smashed to pieces at this very moment. The scene in front of him blurred, and Murong Yu realized that he had suddenly appeared in a piece of ruins. There were no more cultivators, nor were there any majestic buildings. This primordial star was indeed shattered by a saber, and the people of this sect were all crushed into powder by the power that was released in that instant. They didn't even have a chance to escape. Murong Yu was extremely shocked. According to his observation, the weakest of these people was an expert of the true self realm, and most of them were of the selfless realm. He couldn't guarantee that there weren't any experts who had comprehended Tao in this sect. If there were, that would be even more terrifying. Even experts who had comprehended Tao couldn't react in time. Then, how powerful was the person who had slashed out that saber gleam? It was too terrifying. Is that saber gleam related to the Blade of Chaos? If that saber gleam was slashed out by the Blade of Chaos, then who was the enemy of the owner of the Blade of Chaos? How terrifying was his power? Even a Tao weapon like the Blade of Chaos was crushed by him. While Murong Yu was pondering, he saw that there was nothing nearby. Everything was probably destroyed by that saber gleam. Whoosh! At this moment, the scene in front of Murong Yu changed, and the original sect and those cultivators appeared in front of him again. It started to cycle again. These projections happened to record the moment when it was destroyed and the period of time before it was destroyed. Since he already knew that these were just projections, Murong Yu started to wander around this sect. After a while, he found the location of this sect's treasury. However, the entire treasury had been destroyed and nothing was left. Just as Murong Yu felt that there was nothing left here and was about to leave this place and return to the solar system, his heart skipped a beat. Just now, he vaguely sensed a powerful aura coming from the depths of the earth beneath his feet. Although the aura had only flashed and was very weak, he happened to catch it. Could there be other mysteries below? Murong Yu pondered for a moment. Then he immediately took a step forward and began to drill into the ground. This was because the entire origin planet had a terrifying suppression on divine telekinesis. Therefore, Murong Yu couldn't use his divine telekinesis to check what exactly was in the depths of the earth. When he reached the core of the earth, Murong Yu finally sensed the existence of formations and restrictions. Not far ahead, a space was enveloped by hundreds of millions of layers of formations and restrictive spells. But these formations and restrictive spells were not obvious. If it were someone else, they might not even be able to discover these formations. If he were to rush over, those formations and restrictions would be triggered. By then, one would be crushed into powder by these formations and restrictions. This was because Yu realized that most of these formations and restrictions were killing formations, and only a small portion of them were defensive formations. However, these formations and restrictions had no effect on Yu. Yu passed through billions of formations and restrictions as if he was taking a stroll in the park and entered the formation and restrictions. This was a stone chamber that wasn't very big. It was about 1 mile in radius. The furnishings inside were rather simple. As soon as he entered this stone room, Yu couldn't help but shiver. All the hairs on his body instantly stood on end. The resentment was too strong. Yu could even see that the resentment in the entire stone room was about to materialize. Who could have such strong resentment? What came into sight was a skeleton. Almost all the bones in its body were broken, and it was leaning on the side of the stone room. And the resentment that lingered in the entire stone room was emitted from this skeleton, even though it had been dead for many years. But the resentment still didn't dissipate. One could imagine how much resentment this skeleton had when it was alive. And on the wall beside the skeleton, Yu saw a few shocking words written in blood. Hateful heaven, hateful earth. Although it was only 4 words, but the monstrous resentment was contained in these 4 words. You could even feel the resentment and anger of the skeleton from these 4 words. Presumably, this person should be the founder of that sect or a big shot. The reason why he had such strong resentment was probably because of the blade that annihilated his entire sect. That blade was really too strong. Perhaps he didn't even have the possibility to fight back. Perhaps at that time, he was cultivating in seclusion here and didn't even have time to react before he was severely injured by the power that exploded from that blade. In the end, he only left behind these 4 words before he died unwillingly. However, this person's strength was already very strong. Those people outside didn't even have powder. This person could still leave behind a skeleton, which was relatively good. Sweeping his gaze, Yu's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. In addition to the skeleton and the 4 words filled with resentment, Yu also found 2 jade slips and a palm-sized ancient pagoda beside the skeleton. Even the skeleton was shocked to death, but the ancient pagoda and the 2 jade slips were fine. This could only mean one thing. The 2 jade slips and the ancient pagoda were of extremely high quality and grade. That blade light couldn't destroy them. Another possibility was that the skeleton desperately protected these 3 things when it was alive. No matter which one caused these 3 things to not be damaged, it showed that these 3 things were absolute treasures. I wonder if it could be a Dao artifact-level treasure. It's best if it's a defensive treasure. Yu suddenly looked forward to it. At the same time, he reached out his hand to grab the 3 treasures. Asterisk Kaka. Asterisk, however, just as Yu's big hand approached the skeleton, and before he could grab the 3 treasures, the skeleton's big hand quickly grabbed Yu's wrist. Chapter 2153. Yu was almost scared to death. This skeleton was most likely a powerhouse who had comprehended the Tao. The gap between him and Yu wasn't small at all. If this guy was not dead, he could probably blow Yu to death with one breath. In his shock and anger, he immediately burst out with a strong force, try to shatter the pale, white bone hand. At the same time, his figure retreated violently. However, what shocked him was that even though he attacked with all his strength, the hand was still unable to break free. However, the large hand that had broken off inch by inch was still firmly holding onto his large hand. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to break free. On the contrary, that big hand was grabbing him so hard that it hurt, and it was getting stronger. Yu was both shocked and enraged. Gathering all the strength in his other hand, he fiercely punched out. The skeleton didn't dodge, allowing Yu's fist to land on it. With a loud bang, Murong Yu's palm was almost shattered into pieces by the strong rebounding force. However, the skeleton still did not move. Murong Yu's strongest attack did not even brush off the dust on the skeleton. Murong Yu's shock was imaginable. Was this skeleton dead or not? Murong Yu looked at the skeleton with a gloomy expression. Other than the hand that grabbed him, the skeleton did not make any other move. Otherwise, Murong Yu didn't know if he'd be able to take a punch from him. Help! Take revenge, and you can get my inheritance. Swear an oath. Otherwise, you'll die. At that moment, a cold, intermittent voice suddenly sounded in Murong Yu's ears. Murong Yu frowned slightly. Not to mention how terrifying the strength of the powerhouse who destroyed this sect was, he did not have the ability to take revenge. Moreover, he did not know if that person was the original owner of the Chaos Blade. If he wanted to take revenge, how could he do it? If the other party was a bad person, then so be it. But what if he was not? He could not do it. Moreover, he hated being threatened the most in his life. This skeleton threatened him to swear an oath and forced Murong Yu to take revenge for him. This was the most unpleasant thing for Murong Yu. At this time, Murong Yu finally confirmed that the skeleton was dead. The reason why he could still grab Murong Yu or talk to him, it was completely because this person died with grievances. This person's resentment was so strong that even if he died with grievances. Therefore, when he saw Murong Yu, he wanted Murong Yu to take revenge for him. Don't come out and make trouble since you're already dead. Murong Yu sneered and took out the Chaos Blade. Boom! The instant the edge of chaos appeared, the skeletal hand that was originally holding onto Murong Yu abruptly loosened its grip. Then, he threw a punch at the Chaos Blade. I'm going to kill you. A voice full of hatred rang in Murong Yu's ears. The skeleton attacked the Chaos Blade wildly. This further confirmed Murong Yu's conjecture. The Chaos Blade was most likely the culprit that had cut the Origin Star in half, or the murderer's weapon. However, since the skeleton had changed its target, it was convenient for Murong Yu. Murong Yu was quick to react. With a wave of his hand, he collected the 2 jade slips and the ancient pagoda into the He-Tu and the Luo Shu. Whoosh! In the next moment, he took a step forward and rushed out of the stone room. At the same time, he summoned the Chaos Blade. The Chaos Blade broke through hundreds of millions of restrictions and shot out. In the process, the Chaos Blade also triggered those formations and restrictions. Rumble, countless formations and restrictions were activated. The terrifying power of the formation burst out and swept in all directions. The surrounding void was directly crushed. Seeing that the situation wasn't looking good, Murong Yu grabbed the edge of chaos and rushed into the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo. After entering the He-Tu Luo Shu, he was no longer afraid of the skeleton. With a thought, the He-Tu Luo Shu was teleported to the planet where the entrance was. As for the skeleton, although the skeleton was powerful, if it rushed out, it would definitely be blasted into powder by those formations and restrictions. Moreover, the skeleton was only like this because it did not vent its anger. In fact, it was already dead. Why would it chase after Murong Yu? After appearing near the entrance, Murong Yu did not immediately leave the He-Tu Luo Shu. Murong Yu had a feeling that the ancient pagoda and the 2 jade slips were definitely peerless treasures. Therefore, he first took out the 2 jade slips and probed them with his divine thought. Of the 2 jade slips, one of them recorded a cultivation method and the introduction of that sect. The other jade slip recorded the skeleton's cultivation experience, inheritance, and various other things. Murong Yu read 10 lines at a time and quickly digested the information in the 2 jade slips. So, after comprehending the Tao, the experts are already the strongest existences in the universe. However, after comprehending the Tao, the experts are also divided into realms. Initial Tao, Tao Lord, and the legendary Tao Ancestor. After comprehending the Tao, there were still 4 major realms. However, in the entire universe, there were not many experts who comprehended the Tao. Most of them were only at the initial Tao realm. Super experts at the Dao Lord realm were already quite rare, and those at the Dao Lord realm were even rarer. As for the Dao Ancestor realm, it was only a legendary realm. The skeleton had only heard of the existence of the Dao Ancestor realm, but it did not know if there was anyone at this level in the universe. Murong guessed that the Dao Ancestor was most likely the Chaos Controller, but whether it was or not, he still had to confirm it. The skeleton was the sect master of the Eight Desolate Sect. He was a Dao Lord level existence when he was alive. His strength was extremely terrifying. However, a Dao Lord was directly killed by the aftershock of the Saber Light. Then, how powerful was the person who did it? The person who did it was very likely to be a Dao Lord level existence, even more terrifying than the sect master of the Eight Desolate Sect. And the Eight Desolate Sect was an extremely powerful force in the universe. The weakest disciples in the sect were at the True Self realm. Murong guess was right. In fact, there were many peerless experts at the initial Dao realm. However, the skeleton was the only one at the Dao Lord realm. Of course, that was all in the past. Ever since that ray of light struck down, the Eight Desolate Sect no longer existed. The entire force was destroyed in an instant, and no one survived. The Eight Desolate Sect was the life's effort of the sect master. No wonder he was so resentful and had such heavy resentment. I wonder if the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace was at the initial Dao realm or the Dao Lord realm. Perhaps he was only at the initial Dao realm. Could it be that he also obtained a similar inheritance back then? Murong pondered in his heart. There was a behemoth like the Eight Desolate Sect in the Heavenly Mystery Secret Realm, and there might also be other behemoths. Perhaps the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace had obtained the inheritance of another behemoth or something. Everything was possible. This thought only flashed through Murong mind, and then he shifted his attention to the Jade Slip. Apart from a rough introduction of the Eight Desolate Sect and the level of this universe, the other Jade Slip was the sect treasure of the Eight Desolate Sect, the Eight Desolate Kill. The Eight Desolate Kill was the ultimate technique of the Eight Desolate Sect. Everyone could cultivate it. Of course, only the sect master of the Eight Desolate Sect, the founder of the Eight Desolate Kill, could cultivate all of it. Everyone else was cultivating an incomplete cultivation technique. With Murong's current realm and strength, he still could not understand this cultivation technique. However, the sect master of the Eight Desolate Sect relied on this cultivation technique to cultivate to the Dao Lord realm and even created the powerful Eight Desolate Sect. One could imagine that this cultivation technique was definitely extraordinary. At the very least, it could allow one to cultivate to the Dao Lord realm. If this cultivation technique were to spread out, the entire universe would probably be stirred up by a storm of blood. There would be countless peerless experts fighting over this cultivation technique. Murong carefully put away this cultivation technique and inheritance. In particular, the cultivation experience of the Eight Desolate Sect's sect master was even more useful. Limited by his special physique, Murong could not cultivate the Eight Desolate Kill, but he could refer to the cultivation experience of the Eight Desolate Sect's sect master to improve his cultivation. This would allow him to take fewer detours in his future cultivation path. Finally, Murong shifted his gaze to the ancient pagoda. The ancient tower was called the Eight Desolate Mysterious Thunder Tower. It was the personal treasure of the Eight Desolate Sect's sect master, a Dao Lord level Dao artifact. Moreover, it was both offensive and defensive, much stronger than the previous Shadow Stepping Palace. The sudden appearance of the lightning that Murong saw and killed those ferocious beasts was due to the Eight Desolate Mysterious Thunder Tower. However, that was the last time it had such power, because after a long time, the power of lightning stored in the Eight Desolate Mysterious Thunder Tower had been exhausted. However, even so, the Eight Desolate Mysterious Thunder Tower still had strong offensive and defensive abilities. Of course, the premise was that Murong could unleash its power. It was different from the Shadow Stepping Palace, which required soul power to activate. The Eight Desolate Mysterious Thunder Tower did not require soul power to activate. Instead, it required power to activate like ordinary magic treasures. Murong tried it, and the 8 desolate mysterious thunder tower was easily activated. It could erupt with the defensive power of a celestial realm expert. However, its offensive power was slightly inferior. It was not even as good as Murong's own attack. After all, although the 8 desolate mysterious thunder tower was a magic treasure with both offensive and defensive abilities. However, it still focused on the defensive aspect. The offensive aspect required the support of the power of lightning. However, Murong did not plan to use the 8 desolate mysterious thunder tower to attack. He only needed to use it for defense. As for offense, his own methods were more reliable and powerful. After refining the 8 desolate mysterious thunder tower, Murong kept it in his body. In this way, as long as he willed it, the 8 desolate mysterious thunder tower could be activated. It was much faster than in Hichu Luoshu. It was almost time. Murong left Hichu Luoshu and appeared in the Tianji Palace. Now, it was time to solve the skeleton's problem. Junior brother, you came out already? Didn't your strength improve? Great Elder Tianshu appeared beside Murong immediately. After observing for a while, he frowned and asked, Senior brother Tianshu, it's not so easy to break through. Moreover, this time I entered the Tianji secret realm. It's not that I didn't gain anything. I got a lot of heaven and earth treasures. Murong laughed. Of course, the biggest benefit he got was that the Chaos Blade had fused with another fragment, as well as the 8 desolate kill and other treasures. Chapter 2154. Milky Way Star Sector, Skull Sect. Skull Sect was the official name that Skull had given to his forces recently. Moreover, after destroying the solar system, he officially announced it to the outside world. Skull Sect in the main hall. The original 9 celestial realm powerhouses stood on both sides of the main hall with uneasy expressions, while Skull sat on the main seat, looking at the celestial realm powerhouses with a faint smile on his face. You guys are really trash. Stagnating at the first level of the celestial realm for so long and unable to break through. Look at me. How long has it been since I broke through from the Genesis realm to the celestial realm? I'm already at the 3rd level of the celestial realm. Sky Crane and the others were furious. This Skull was really too shameless. If he did not obtain a treasure inheritance, how could he possibly improve his realm so quickly? Excluding those people from the occult palace, Skull was already the strongest person in the Milky Way star sector. However, as the strongest person, Skull did not have the demeanor of a powerhouse at all. He mocked and ridiculed these veteran celestial realm powerhouses all day long. Was he not looking for a sense of superiority over them? However, Skull was too strong. Even though they were furious, they did not dare to show it. In fact, each of them had to face Skull's words with a smile and admit that they were trash. Needless to say, it was extremely sullen. Skull, get out here. At this moment, an earth-shattering roar suddenly erupted outside the Skull Sect. In the sky outside the Skull Sect, a group of more than 10 people floated in the void, looking down at the Skull Sect with cold expressions. What audacity! You actually dare to call out the school leader's name. Die for me. A disciple of the Skull School roared. Stepping in the void, he charged straight towards the group of people in the sky. You overestimate yourself. Tianming's eyes flashed coldly, and he pointed out with a finger. With a poof, before the Skull Sect disciple could get close, he had already turned into a cloud of blood mist and disappeared between heaven and earth. He was only at the Genesis realm, while Tianming was at the 2nd level of the celestial realm. The difference between the two could not be measured by Tao, so it was normal to kill him with a finger. Very good, Tianming, you finally appeared. However, it seems that you don't intend to surrender? Skull's cold voice rang out in this world. At the same time, Skeleton, Sky Crane, and the others appeared in front of Tianming. Skeleton, you're just a bandit. What right do you have to rule the Milky Way? Tianming said disdainfully. Even though Skeleton's realm was higher than his, and he was stronger than him. However, Tianming still looked down on skeletons. Tianming, a wise man, submits to circumstances. If you don't want to die, submit immediately. Tianhe stepped forward, pointed at Tianming, and scolded. Tianming sneered. Tianhe, a spineless thing like you has no right to speak to me. Right now, I am talking to your master. Since when is it your turn to speak? Get out of my way. Sky Crane's face instantly turned red, and his eyes flashed with a terrifying killing intent. At the same time, Tianhu and the others' faces were also turning pale. Although Tianming was only scolding Tianhe, he was actually scolding them as well. However, they really didn't know how to refute. Skeleton was indifferent to this. In fact, he secretly agreed with Tianming's words. To him, Sky Crane and the rest were nothing more than powerful dogs. Since the dogs were scolded, he didn't have the heart to get back at them. With a sweep of his gaze, Skeleton discovered Murongyu in the crowd. A cold glint flashed through his eyes. Murongyu, since you're not here to submit, then why don't you show your allegiance? Are you here to kill me? With your strength of level 9 Insight Realm? Skeleton laughed heartily. Murongyu smiled faintly. Level 9 Insight Realm is enough to kill you. Skeleton, I heard that you want me, Shenzhen, to submit to you? You want to unify the Milky Way starfield and subdue Shenzhen. This is understandable. However, before you unify the Milky Way starfield, I think we should settle the old scores between us. Skeleton's face turned cold. You're the one who's always against me, right? Since you're here to die, I'll send you on your way today. I heard that your 5 women are alluring beauties. Don't worry. After you leave, I'll take good care of them on your behalf. Murongyu's eyes narrowed as an intense killing intent flashed from the depths of his eyes. Then, he took a step forward and charged towards the skeleton. Skeleton's face was full of mockery. He waved his hand and slapped toward Murongyu. He looked down on Murongyu. After all, the difference in strength between them was too big. He could crush Murongyu countless times with one hand. Elephant-pulling fist. Murongyu gathered his battle strength and punched out quickly. Boom! With a deafening boom, the skeleton staggered and took a few steps back in the air, causing the space behind it to explode. On the other hand, Murongyu was sent flying by the recoil. Although he was pushed back a little farther than Skeleton, it was enough to stun countless people. Although Murongyu was slightly weaker than Skeleton, he was only at level 9 of the Insight Realm. This level of strength was truly terrifying. Sky Crane and the others' faces changed. They retreated unknowingly. On the other hand, Skeleton's face turned serious. Outsiders only knew that he was pushed back by Murongyu. However, they did not know that Murongyu's power had already surged into his body and was wreaking havoc. The power of the vortex. Compared to Skeleton's serious face, Murongyu's face did not change. Although my battle strength is only at level 2 of the Celestial Realm, my killing intent has increased tremendously. Even if it's just my cultivation, it's almost the same as Skeleton's. If I use my soul attack and shadow step, Skeleton, a level 3 Celestial Realm cultivator, will not be able to withstand a single blow. Since that's the case, let's end this battle as soon as possible, Murongyu thought to himself. Then he grabbed the void. In the next moment, the Chaos Blade appeared in his hand. Skeleton, eat my blade. Murongyu roared. Holding the Chaos Blade with both hands, he slashed down. Whoosh! The power of chaos exploded, and the surrounding void became chaotic. Before the Chaos Blade slashed down, Skeleton felt that the power in his body was beginning to go out of his control. It had already started to become chaotic. Skeleton was shocked. He immediately began to stabilize the power in his body. At the same time, he threw out a punch. However, what made him speechless was that the power he threw out had already collided with each other due to the chaos. It was supposed to be aimed at Murongyu, but in fact, it had already turned halfway to the other side. However, the Chaos Blade was not affected at all. With a terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth, it slashed down violently. Skeleton was shocked. With a thought, he was about to retreat. However, at this moment, he was shocked to find that the power in his body that was already chaotic suddenly froze. That wasn't all. His soul began to tremble violently. An extremely strong aura of death had already shrouded his entire soul. The Chaos Blade, the power of Shadow Stomp, and the Soul Attack came together. Without any warning, Skeleton did not even have time to react. In the first moment, his soul had already been torn into pieces by Murong-Yu. Once the soul died, Skeleton was already dead. However, no one knew that Murong-Yu had killed Skeleton. They only saw Murong-Yu slashing Skeleton in half with one slash. Killing Skeleton in one slash. Didn't that mean that Murong-Yu was much stronger than Skeleton? Skeleton was in the 3rd level of the Celestial Realm. Could it be that Murong-Yu was in the 4th level of the Celestial Realm? He looked like he was in the 9th level of the Insight Realm. Was he just pretending to be weak? Was he pretending? Not to mention Sky Crane and the people from Skeleton's sect who were shocked. Even Tianming and the others were deeply stunned. Murong-Yu's performance was heaven-defying. In reality, this was not Murong-Yu's full combat strength. Back then, even a peak-level Celestial Realm ferocious beast could not kill him. Although Murong-Yu was only running away at that time, wasn't running away a part of one's strength? Run! Seeing that Skeleton was killed by Murong-Yu, the people from Skeleton's sect were stunned. The members of the Skull sect were stunned at first. Then someone shouted. Everyone scattered like monkeys when the tree fell. They fled in all directions frantically. Kill whoever runs. Tianming took a step forward and grabbed at the air with both hands. A terrifying power exploded from his hands, turning into millions of thin threads that pierced through the void and strangled. Poof, poof, poof. In an instant, the people who had fled in all directions were killed in large numbers. Tianming's strength was in the 2nd level of the Celestial Realm. Those people could not stop him at all. However, even so, the people from Skeleton's sect were still fleeing madly. However, Sky Crane and the others stood still on the spot. It was not that they did not want to move, but they realized that they had been targeted by Murong-Yu. Even Skeleton, who was in the 3rd level of the Celestial Realm, was killed by Murong-Yu in one slash, let alone them. Therefore, although they wanted to run, they did not dare to. Swoosh! At that moment, a blinding light shot up into the sky from Skeleton's corpse. Then, it shattered the void and flew into the distance. Skeleton, I've been waiting for you. Murong-Yu smiled faintly, and the Chaos Blade in his hand had already slashed at the light. Murong-Yu, leave a way out for everything. We'll meet again in the future, Skeleton said through gritted teeth from the light. At that moment, everyone saw clearly that the light was a book. Sky Crane and the others recognized it immediately. Was this not the book that Skeleton had snatched from their hands back then? It was because of this book that Skeleton's strength had skyrocketed. If I can get my hands on this book, my strength will definitely skyrocket by a few levels. Sky Crane and the others' eyes gleamed. Unknowingly, they moved toward Murong-Yu. Naturally, their actions did not escape Murong-Yu's eyes. Murong-Yu only glanced at them and did not say anything. If they dared to attack, it would only speed up their deaths. Chapter 2155. Although the natal artifact was powerful, Skeleton was no match for Murong-Yu when he was at his peak, let alone Skeleton, who was only a remnant soul controlling a book. After being slashed by Murong-Yu, the light emitted from the book dimmed significantly. At the same time, Skeleton's power seemed to have been exhausted. The book could no longer fly and slowly fell to the ground like a kite with a broken finger. Murong-Yu stretched out his hand and grabbed the book in midair. Do it! Just as Murong-Yu reached out his hand to grab the book, Sky Crane and the other Level 1 Celestial Realm cultivators shouted at the same time. Then, they instantly unleashed their strongest attacks, smashing through the void and rushing toward the book. At the same time, their strongest attacks, most powerful origin tools and magic treasures, were unleashed in torrents towards Murong-Yu. It was the same logic as attacking Wei to save Zhao. Their original intention was to attack Murong-Yu, so that Murong Yu could only defend himself and would not be able to get the book. Then, they would have a chance to get the book. The book was too powerful. In a short period of time, it allowed Skeleton to break through 2 small realms, turning him from an insignificant junior to the strongest cultivator in the Milky Way galaxy. The powerful temptation of the book had surpassed their fear of Murong Yu. You're courting death. Other than Murong Yu, Tianming was the first to react. He immediately roared and threw a punch at Sky Crane. On the other hand, Murong Yu indifferently glanced at Tianhu and the others with a mocking smile in his eyes. These guys really dared to attack. Indeed, humans die for wealth and birds die for food. These people did not have a good relationship with Murong Yu. Moreover, the book was very strange. If one of them got the book, then, when he became stronger, he would definitely think of ways to go against Murong Yu. Murong Yu would not let that happen. Therefore, he had to nip the potential threat in the bud. Swoosh! With a thought, the blade of chaos directly shattered the void, locked onto dark wind, and viciously slashed over. At this moment, Sky Crane's heart was suddenly enveloped by a strong aura of death. Shocked, he slashed his natal artifact saber at the chaos blade. At the same time, he immediately retreated. Boom! After a deafening sound, Sky Crane's natal artifact saber was sent flying. The chaos blade did not stop and slashed through Sky Crane's body. With a poof sound, blood splattered all over the sky. Sky Crane had been slashed in 2. He could not be more dead. At the same time, Murong Yu took a step forward and activated the power of Shadow Stomp. Instantly, King Rin was frozen in the air. At this moment, Murong Yu's fist, which contained his strongest power, had already landed on his head. Bang! King Rin's head was smashed into a rain of blood. Even his soul was shattered. In the process, Murong Yu also launched a soul attack. A myriad layers of soul waves completely erased Sky Crane's soul. In an instant, 3 of the 8 Celestial Realm experts were gone. Although the remaining 3 were shocked, they also felt fear. However, the more they were scared, the more they wanted to get the book to increase their strength. Therefore, not only did they not run away, but they also pounced on the book. You really want the treasure more than your life. Since that's the case, all of you can die. Murong Yu sneered as he unleashed his strongest attack. Poof, poof, poof. As for Tian Shan, Zhenlong, and the others, they were only at the first level of the Sky Realm. There is a huge gap between them and Murong Yu's battle prowess, so they couldn't even take a single move from him. With one blow, Murong Yu killed all the Celestial Realm experts. In the end, Sky Crane and the rest were all killed. From the time they tried to snatch the book until they were killed, they did not even have a chance to touch the book. This was because the book was already in Murong Yu's hands. Skeleton and the 8 great Celestial tier powerhouses had already been killed, and after they died, the skeleton sects scattered like monkeys when the tree fell. However, many of the Skull sect members were bandits. Therefore, Murong Yu ordered Tianming to hunt down these bandits. After all, these people had done a lot of evil. Only by wiping them out could they reduce the number of crimes. Murong Yu, thank you. Zhu Xiaoning immediately came to thank him after knowing that Murong Yu killed Skeleton. It's nothing. This is my promise to you. Besides, even if I didn't promise you, Skeleton is still my enemy. Murong Yu smiled, not minding it at all. No matter what, you still help me take revenge. I have to thank you. If you didn't have 5 wives, I would have given myself to you. Perhaps it was because she'd gotten her revenge, but Zhu Xiaoning felt completely relaxed and joked with Murong Yu. Murong Yu only shook his head and smiled. Don't be like that. There are many good men in the world. You will meet your destined one very soon. Zhu Xiaoning was top-notch in terms of looks and other aspects. Unfortunately, it was impossible for Murong Yu to accept her. Therefore, Zhu Xiaoning could only fall in love with him. Zhu Xiaoning's eyes dimmed. However, she still smiled and concealed her thoughts. You womanizer. I was just joking. Why would I like you? I only like men who are single-minded. Murong Yu smiled and did not continue to dwell on this matter with Zhu Xiaoning. He changed the topic. What do you plan to do next? Do you want to stay in Shenzhen or go out to explore? I have a plan. I want to continue opening auction houses. Not only in the Milky Way star field, but I also want to open auction houses outside of the Milky Way star field and throughout the endless starry sky. Zhu Xiaoning's eyes flashed with excitement. It seemed like she already had a plan. That's good too. With your business skills, I believe your auction houses will be opened in other star fields soon. What do you need? I will definitely help if I can. Murongyu said with a smile. Zhu Xiaoning rolled her eyes at Murongyu. What do you mean by my auction houses? I plan to rely on you and Shenzhen to open auction houses. Otherwise, a little girl like me will be bullied without knowing what happened. Murongyu looked at Zhu Xiaoning in surprise. If Zhu Xiaoning really had such a plan, it would be great. After all, many people in Shenzhen were good at cultivation or fighting, but they did not have much talent in business. Shenzhen had been rooted in the solar system for so many years, but the business could barely cover the daily expenses of Shenzhen. If Zhu Xiaoning really wanted to open auction houses throughout the universe, wouldn't money come rolling in? Moreover, the auction houses could also serve as an intelligence department. What? You don't agree? Zhu Xiaoning stared at Murongyu. Murongyu laughed. Why wouldn't I agree? I support you 100%. Also, I will send experts to protect you secretly. If you need anything, just ask. The entire Shenzhen will be your backing. Okay, this is my plan. Zhu Xiaoning was very excited, so she explained her plan to Murongyu in detail. It seemed like she had this plan for a long time. Not long after, Zhu Xiaoning left Shenzhen and started the auction houses. Murongyu naturally used all his resources to support her. Murongyu could even imagine that with Zhu Xiaoning's business ability, the auction houses would soon bring in a lot of money for Shenzhen. With the support of these financial resources, Shenzhen would develop rapidly. In Hichu Luoshu, Murongyu took out the book that he had taken from the skeleton. Murongyu, leave some leeway for us in the future. If you let me go, I will repay you generously in the future. Skeleton's voice came out. Is that so? Murongyu smiled coldly. With Skeleton's personality, he was talking about killing Murongyu first, then destroying the entire Shenzhen. He would definitely not let Skeleton go. Moreover, this book was too strange. Who knew what realm Skeleton would reach in the future with the help of this book? Boom! An incomparably powerful force rushed into the book, causing the light from the book to soar into the sky. Murongyu, you want to refine me? Dream on. I have already fused with this book. Unless you refine the entire book, you can't do anything to me. Skeleton's arrogant voice sounded incomparably proud. Murongyu did not comment and continued to refine the book. However, after a period of time, he still did not refine the book. During this time, Skeleton mocked him to his heart's content. If physical strength was not enough, then what about soul strength? It was also not enough. Murongyu tried all kinds of methods, but he was still unable to refine the book. This made him feel the strangeness of the book even more. Skeleton, don't be too proud. I can't refine you for now. But with my cultivation speed, do you think that it's impossible for me to refine you? Right now, I'll suppress you first. Murongyu sneered and directly suppressed the book in the depths of Hichu Luoshu. Murongyu, don't come out for me. Otherwise, I'll definitely kill you. Skeleton's furious voice sounded, but in the end, it disappeared without a trace. Murongyu quickly returned to the mysterious Heaven's Palace. After suppressing Skeleton, Murongyu left Hichu Luoshu. But just as he appeared in Shenzhen, he received W's transmission. It seemed to be very urgent. Murongyu did not hesitate at all. After giving instructions, he rapidly teleported back to the mysterious Heaven's Palace. Just as he entered the main hall, Murongyu discovered that 7 stars and the 7 stars Grand Elder, a total of 14 people, were all in the main hall. All of their faces were gloomy, worry overflowing from their words and expressions. The atmosphere in the entire main hall was very oppressive and heavy. Murongyu, you're back? That's great. Hurry, let's go save your Grandmaster. When 7 stars and the others saw Murongyu, joy appeared on their faces. Chapter 2156. Save Grandmaster? What's going on? Yu was stunned and was unable to react for a moment. His Grandmaster should be the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace, right? However, the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace was at least at the initial Tao realm and was rather powerful. Even if he was in danger and everyone wanted to rescue him, when was it his turn as a level 9 Insight Realm cultivator? The second-generation disciples and the 7 Stars Grand Elder were all high-level, selfless realm experts. Looking at their anxious faces, it seemed like they were unable to rescue the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace. It seemed like they were specifically waiting for Yu. Could it be that they thought that Yu, a small Insight Realm cultivator, could do something that even they could not do? Could this really be true and not teasing Yu? Yu, you really have to take action for this matter. We're at our wits' end, Sky Pivot said somewhat anxiously. As he spoke, he wanted to pull Yu away from here. Hold on, I'm confused now. Can you guys explain it to me first? Yu stopped Sky Pivot's action and asked at the same time. There's no time. Let's talk as we walk. Sky Pivot pulled Yu and directly pulled Yu out of the main hall. At the same time, the Heavenly Mystery Palace and the 7 Stars Grand Elder also rushed out quickly, as if they were really in a hurry. Yu followed these big shots of the Heavenly Mystery Palace and hurriedly left the Heavenly Mystery Palace, flying all the way toward the endless starry sky outside the Heavenly Mystery Palace. On the way, Yu finally understood what had happened. Not long ago, a Tao artifact had appeared in the endless starry sky, far away from the Heavenly Mystery Palace. At that time, the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace went, as did the second-generation disciples and some of the third-generation disciples. Of course, apart from them, even more experts had gone. There were also many initial Tao and even Tao Lord experts. At that time, an earth-shattering battle broke out. Virtually all of them were initial Tao Lords and Tao Lords. Like Dubhe, Fekta, and the rest of the Peak's selfless realm powerhouses, they could only retreat far away. None of them dared to approach him. Otherwise, they would have died long ago. The reason for that was because that battle had completely destroyed 2 star fields and turned them into ruins. Not 2 origin planets, not 2 galaxies, but 2 star regions. Every shattered starfield was larger than the Milky Way's starfield. One could only imagine how terrifying that battle was. If it hadn't been for the fact that something had happened at the very end, the number of planetary systems that had been destroyed would have been far more than just those 2. The battles between Tao Lords were simply too brutal. Even though the destruction of those star systems was not done on purpose, it was just a result of the energy that leaked out. However, who asked them to be so powerful? Then, the reason why the Bahuang sect was destroyed was it also because some experts were undoubtedly destroyed in a great battle. Yu pondered in his heart and felt that this conjecture was very likely. At that time, the founding ancestor of the Heavenly Mystery Palace was very powerful and was one of the powerhouses with the highest hopes of seizing that Tao artifact. But later, because of their great battle, they seemed to have accidentally barged into a mystic realm from ancient times. In the end, those super powerhouses and Tao artifacts were all trapped. But that mystic realm was filled with danger. Those powerhouses had just entered not long, and there were already powerhouses who perished. Not true self-realm, nor selfless realm, but initial Tao realm powerhouses who perished. Dubhe and the rest immediately carried out the rescue, but they were unable to enter that mystic realm at all. In Migrez's divination, it deduced that the Heavenly Mystery Palace's founding ancestor was in mortal danger. The Heavenly Mystery Palace, being so powerful, was completely supported by the founding ancestor of the Heavenly Mystery Palace alone. Furthermore, the Heavenly Mystery Palace, this Leviathan, was not without enemies. If the founding ancestor perished, Dubhe and the rest could imagine it. The Heavenly Mystery Palace, this Leviathan, would likely collapse with a loud bang before long. With Dubhe and the rest's strength, it was simply not enough to support the entire Heavenly Mystery Palace. Furthermore, The Heavenly Mystery Palace's founding ancestors' kindness to them was as weighty as a mountain. Not because of the Heavenly Mystery Palace, just because of the master-disciple relationship, they also had to rescue him. Except, they were unable to rescue him at all. Hence, they thought of Morongyu. This young man was full of wonders and miracles. Intuition told them that Morongyu could definitely successfully rescue the Heavenly Mystery Palace's founding ancestor. Morongyu's body trembled fiercely. Your expectations of me are too high. How can I have that strength? Morongyu also had a headache thinking about it. A mystic realm that even initial Dao and Dao Lord realm powerhouses are unable to escape actually want him, a measly little grotto, nether realm tier 9 cultivator, to go and rescue. Isn't this a fantasy story? Kid, right now, you're our Heavenly Mystery Palace's hope. There's still a long way to go. You have to work hard. Kaiyang patted Morongyu's shoulder, looking sincere and earnest. Morongyu's body trembled again. All right, I'll definitely do my best. In the end, he added, but don't expect too much from me. On the Heavenly Mystery Palace's side, each starfield was connected by a teleportation channel. Therefore, they quickly left the Heavenly Mystery Palace's territory. But after reaching the territory of other factions, they could not use the teleportation array as they pleased. They could only use the public teleportation array, and each teleportation had to pay an extremely high teleportation fee. That was fine. Everyone had a lot of businesses and did not care about these things. However, not every place had a teleportation array. Constantly teleporting, Morongyu did not know how many starfields he had passed through, how many great factions like the Heavenly Mystery Palace were even more powerful than the Heavenly Mystery Palace. A year later, they finally appeared in a starfield. Morongyu had never seen a starfield as lively as this one. People came and went, and all of them had extremely high strength. Morongyu had seen many powerhouses at the True Self realm, Selfless realm, and even the initial Dao Lord realm. And there was simply only one existence like Morongyu who was at the level 9 Insight realm. Master is trapped in the starfield ahead. Standing on an origin star, Morongyu gazed into the distance. That was a starfield covered in dense fog. According to the information he obtained, Morongyu knew that the dense fog ahead did not just cover one starfield, but as many as dozens of starfields. The range was extremely huge. Originally, the dense fog only covered 3 or 4 starfields. But ever since the Great Battle back then, it was unknown if something was triggered. This fog covered dozens of starfields. The people nearby were rather familiar with the starfields that were originally not covered by the fog. However, after the fog covered it, the inside changed. Many people were unable to come out after entering. It could be said to be full of danger inside. How am I supposed to find him in such a huge range? Morongyu could not help but feel depressed. If he was only looking for the founder of the mysterious Heavenly Palace, there would not be any problem. But the problem was that he had never seen him at all. All right? He did not know that the aura was left behind by him at all. Moreover, the fog was full of danger. He might have been blasted into powder by the omnipresent dangers as soon as he entered the dense fog. How was he supposed to find him? Well, let's try our best, Yao Guang said hesitantly. This place was simply too dangerous. It was too difficult for Morongyu, a mere Insight realm powerhouse, to save someone. There are many initial Daoist and Dao Lord level experts trapped inside. There's also a Dao artifact inside, and even treasures and Dao artifacts left behind by those great Dao realm powerhouses after they died. Therefore, many people were flocking in from all directions to get inside. They want to obtain the treasures inside, Tian Xian explained. Morongyu nodded. If not for this reason, why were there so many cultivators here? Why were there even more powerhouses rushing over from afar? As far as his eyes could see, Morongyu could even see cultivators rushing into the fog. Because the fog blocked the prying of spiritual force, he did not know what happened after those people entered. Grandmaster, which direction did they enter from? Morongyu pondered for a moment, and finally decided to take the risk. It's in this direction. Shall we go closer and take a look? After getting Murong Yu's permission, everyone flew over. They only stopped when they stood in front of the heavy fog. Everyone looked into the heavy fog with worried expressions. Only Murong Yu looked at the void outside the fog in a daze. In fact, Murong Yu was not in a daze. Instead, he stared at the aura light left behind in the world and observed it. The founder of the mysterious Heavenly Palace had left the mysterious Heavenly Palace a long time ago. Therefore, it was impossible for Murong Yu to see the aura left behind by him in the mysterious Heavenly Palace. Therefore, he only remembered the auras left behind by those great Tao realm powerhouses. It was very easy to distinguish. The auras left behind by great Tao realm powerhouses were much stronger than the auras of Tianshu and other peak selfless realm powerhouses. They could be recognized at a glance. Because he did not know which aura belonged to the founder of the mysterious Heavenly Palace, Murong Yu identified those auras and then went to find them one by one, slowly choosing. Masters, I'm preparing to enter inside. All right, we'll go with you, Tianshu said without hesitation. At the same time, he was about to step into the heavy fog. Murong Yu was quick to react, pulling him back. There are many dangers inside. I'll go alone. We'll just keep in touch at all times. No, it's too dangerous inside. Although we want to save Master, we can't let you die too. And with our protection, we can at least guarantee your safety, Kai Yong said solemnly. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. Even a great Tao realm powerhouse is trapped inside. Do you think you can protect me? Believe me, I have ways to protect myself. At most, I'll just withdraw. Actually, Murong Yu did not have much confidence either. However, he had the 8 Desolation Profound Thunder Tower, this Tao artifact. If he encountered danger, he could at least protect himself. Moreover, Hichu Luoshu could also teleport. Chapter 2157. In the end, under Murong Yu's insistence, Tianshu and the others stayed outside. Only Murong Yu entered the heavy fog alone. This is bad. The moment he entered the heavy fog, Murong Yu's countenance changed slightly. It was because the auras left behind by the many great Tao realm experts in the fog were clearly weaker than those outside. The deeper he went, the weaker they were. Murong Yu reckoned that if this continued, it wouldn't be long before everyone's auras disappeared without a trace. This wasn't because the fog was affecting his vision. Although Murong Yu's vision was severely suppressed after entering the heavy fog, it had nothing to do with this. He discovered that this fog actually had the ability to wipe out auras. If it wasn't for the fact that those great Tao realm experts were powerful and the auras they left behind were very powerful, they would probably have been wiped out long ago. It was because Murong Yu clearly saw that after entering here, many people's auras had already disappeared. At the same time, Murong Yu also discovered that this fog was actually not fog, but a kind of power. A power that was similar to white fog, but it couldn't be absorbed by humans. How could there be such rich power? If the heavy fog was a super great formation, once this great formation launched an attack, then who would be able to withstand the attack of this power? At the thought of this, Murong Yu couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. However, for the time being, he didn't sense any intense danger. Therefore, he unleashed his speed and chased after the auras left behind by those experts. If he continued to stay, these auras would be wiped out. By then, Murong Yu wouldn't be able to track them at all. Of course, he had already made all the preparations for defense. He had already summoned the 8 Desolation Mysterious Thunder Tower. It floated above his head, sending down streams of light that enveloped him and protected him firmly. As he went deeper, Murong Yu didn't come across any danger. This made him very puzzled. Wasn't it said that many people's soul jade slips would immediately shatter after entering the secret realm? Could it be that those hidden dangers saw that Murong Yu's cultivation level was too low and thus didn't bother to attack him? Murong Yu pondered. Suddenly, a warning sign enveloped his mind. Whoosh! It was a completely subconscious reaction as Murong Yu's figure abruptly retreated. However, no matter how fast he was, he still couldn't completely escape. Bang! The 8 Desolation Mysterious Thunder Tower was directly hit. After a loud sound, it was directly blasted to one side. The sense of danger that enveloped Murong Yu's heart grew stronger and stronger. Boom! With no time to think, Murong Yu gathered all his strength into his fist and punched out. After a loud bang, Murong Yu was directly sent flying. A terrifying rebounding force came crashing down, causing the vital energy and blood in his body to surge like a tidal wave. However, what shocked Murong Yu was that he didn't see anyone or any ferocious beast attacking him. It was as if the other party was invisible and did not exist at all. However, it was impossible for it not to exist. Then there was only one possibility, and that was that the other party's stealth ability was very strong. Even if they attacked, they didn't reveal themselves. From the beginning to the end, Murong Yu didn't even know if the person who attacked him was a cultivator or a ferocious beast. Buzz. At this moment, Murong Yu's soul trembled violently. An extremely strong sense of danger enveloped his entire soul. A very familiar feeling filled his entire soul. Soul attack. Murong Yu then reacted. An extremely terrifying soul power had already rushed into his soul and was rapidly strangling his soul. The strength of the soul power was even far above Murong Yu's. In other words, the person who attacked Murong Yu's soul power was much stronger than his. Murong Yu didn't even have the chance to counterattack. He suddenly felt a sharp pain in his soul. Then, his vision turned black and he lost consciousness. The soul doppelganger was actually knocked out. In the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu's main soul couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his main soul had always been in the Hichu Luo Shu. Otherwise, if it was his main soul that was knocked out, the consequences would be dire. If that happened, he wouldn't even know what had happened, even if he was killed. Moreover, after the incident with Lu Ning, the connection between Murong Yu's main soul and his doppelganger was very weak. Last time, Murong Yu's main soul was implicated and knocked out by Lu Ning. He didn't want to repeat the same mistake. Swoosh! After Murong Yu was knocked out, the 8 Desolation Black Thunder Tower automatically turned into a stream of light and entered his body again. At the same time, a figure finally appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. This was an affectionate and cold young man. Perhaps his strength wasn't very high. However, his soul realm was definitely much higher than Murong Yu's. To be able to knock out Murong Yu's soul with one blow, he was at least a major realm higher than Murong Yu, or even higher. In other words, this person's soul cultivation was at least level 9 of the Genesis realm, or even level 9 of the True Self realm. In the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu's main soul watched all this nervously. If this young man wanted to destroy his physical body, he definitely wouldn't continue to pretend to be dead. After all, his physique was a chaotic celestial body. If it was destroyed, the loss would be disastrous. A level 9 insight realm, trash, actually dares to trespass into my soul tribe's territory? You really don't know what's good for you. If it weren't for the strict order not to kill, I would have already blasted you into pieces. After the young man appeared, he sneered at the unconscious Murong Yu with a face full of disdain. Soul tribe? Murong Yu's body shook violently. Could this be the soul tribe's territory? They trespassed into the soul tribe's territory? According to Hundan, the soul tribe was an extremely powerful race. If this was really the soul tribe's territory, the founder of the mysterious heavenly palace and the others really wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Initial Dao and Dao Lord powerhouses were everywhere in the Soul Tribe. If they rushed in here, they wouldn't even make a move. Perhaps they would be directly suppressed. All right, I'll take the opportunity to see what kind of race the Soul Tribe is. Murong Yu muttered to himself. In any case, he had to make a trip to the Soul Tribe in the end. If it was appropriate, he might enter the Soul Tribe's soul pool to awaken his soul. If the Soul Tribe wasn't anything good, he'd better stay as far away as possible. Forget it. Time's up. Let's go back first. We'll bring this trash back too. The Soul Tribe young man frowned slightly. Then, he waved his hand, and put Murong Yu into a spatial treasure. Murong Yu discovered that there were many other cultivators in the young man's treasure space besides him. These people's strength varied, but they all had one thing in common. They were all unconscious. However, not everyone was as intact as him. Some people's souls were clearly severely injured. They were probably injured by the soul tribe young man. Being in someone else's spatial treasure, Murong Yu didn't do anything. He didn't want to attract the soul tribe young man's attention. Not long after, he was thrown out of the spatial treasure. Before Murong Yu could even take a look at his surroundings, he sensed that his physical body had been sealed. Moreover, the person who attacked seemed to be relatively strong. Murong Yu could clearly feel the strength of the seal. After his strength was sealed, Murong Yu was slapped awake. However, the attitude of the person who woke him up wasn't good. He was kicked awake. This made him very angry. However, he was now in the legendary soul tribe, so he didn't flare up. Otherwise, he would be asking for trouble. You prisoners can be released in the vicinity, but you can't go beyond a radius of 100 miles. Otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you when you die. The young man who had knocked Murong Yu unconscious swept a disdainful glance at the crowd, then quickly left after saying those words. Everyone who was left behind looked at each other. Murong Yu was better. At least he knew that this was the Soul Tribe's territory. As for the others, they were really confused. Other than their group, there were more people nearby. Presumably, these people were the ones who had been captured and brought here. The reason why he was sure that they weren't from the Soul Tribe was because they were all sealed. Didn't they say that they could move freely within a radius of 50 kilometers? Therefore, Murong Yu began to observe the surroundings leisurely. Only he had the leisure to be so carefree now. The others were filled with regret and anger. I wonder if the Grandmaster and the others are also suppressed here? While Murong Yu was observing the surroundings, he was also looking for the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace. It was just that many people were captured, but he did not discover the existence of the founder of the Heavenly Mystery Palace. Unknowingly, Murong Yu had already left the radius of 50 kilometers, walking a large distance. Why are you here? Murong Yu was walking when suddenly, a slightly surprised voice sounded in his ears. Murong Yu got a shock, but saw a little boy about 8 or 9 years old currently standing in front of him, using a surprised gaze to size him up. Without power, I can't even detect this little brat approaching. Murong Yu could not help being speechless. However, the strength of this little brat in front of him was not weak, low-rank Deva realm. Most importantly, this little brat was a soul cultivator. He should be a member of the Soul Tribe. Crap, I've already left the radius of 50 kilometers. Murong Yu's expression changed slightly, turning around to leave. However, he was caught by the little brat. Hey, are you an outsider? Tell me, how did you get here? Can you pass through those array formations and restrictions? Murong Yu's face darkened. Without any strength left, he was pinned to the ground, unable to move at all. And the other party was a little brat. How could he endure this? Great, you can pass through those array formations and restrictions? Then can you bring me into a place? I won't treat you unfairly. The little brat became excited, looking at Murong Yu with a hopeful look. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.